Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Julia. She had long ago gotten used to the fact that some envious people in the village called her a cripple. What can I say? A wheelchair has never made anyone look good. Well, what could she do then? She vaguely remembered the time when she was young and happy with her own husband. Peter, the couple married in their third year of medical school. She an up-and-coming internist, he a dentist, the hope, so to speak, and the brightest minds in medicine, but had lived together for a long 5 years after their marriage. When Julia was walking home from work one evening and met her old friend, Tony, her first childhood love, with whom she lived in the same house, though on different floors, and with whom she had spent her entire childhood, her school years. And then you met him and married him. Tony often blamed her for Julia marrying Peter and moving to another town. Tony, but you know I love him. And you're my best friend. I invited you to the wedding, by the way. And you never showed it up. Who's supposed to take offense to that? Come on, you know how I feel about your husband, don't you? I don't. After what he did to you on the third or fifth date, I'm sorry, but you should have thought about it by now. And really, Peter went crazy on the fifth date. He got jealous of Tony and raised his hand to the girl in front of witnesses. She only got a slap on the wrist, but maybe Tony's right. She should have thought about it from the start. Is her boyfriend really that good? Is this toxic relationship worth continuing? Tony, let's just change the subject. I just came over for tea and to talk about life. How are you doing anyway? Yeah, I'm good. Yesterday, my boss offered me the job of chief accountant. And I'm still thinking yes or no. What's there to think about? You'll be counting my money later. Yeah, you tell me, when was the last time you were at work or after your husband beat you up and made a scene at work? Did you quit? Yeah, that incident set the line between Julia and Tony. Although what to say, the girl from the first day won the respect and trust of both her patients and superiors, senior doctors, kindness, ability to spread to herself, and listen to many knowledge and ability to accurately diagnose. All this made her popular among old ladies. Yes to her, Julia. There is a clue lined up for you again, the superintendent used to say to her when she was making her morning rounds. Yes, Julia, again I'm without lunch and will sit until evening. But you understand, I know that besides me no one will listen to them, will not believe. Pressure will not prescribe the right treatment. Yes, I have an old man here. And so he comes to me every day like to work, all because he lives alone and has no one to talk to. Julia, you're doing great. And Julia blossomed at work among the old guys in the women's group. But apparently, Peter thought otherwise and saw his girlfriend, and then his wife blossom before his eyes. Even in such a seemingly backward society. Julia, confess, you have a lover at work. Is it a young grad student or a new doctor? Peter, don't be silly. You're the only man I have, the first and the last. You're all I have. And she reached out to him for a kiss. But the man pushed her away and slapped her across the face. Yes, so hard that Julia hit her head on the door jamb and fell, hitting the corner of the table. The consequences were most unfortunate. Bruising, concussion, ER and ICU, and then she was fired from her job. She just couldn't work there. She couldn't stand the slanted stares of her coworkers, the pitying, wailing of her patients. And Julia had become disgusted with herself. Where did I go wrong? How could I let it be thought that I had a lover? Tony, help me out here. Julia, just get away from him. Come to my place. I've got a 3-bedroom, I live by myself. Vaughn, really with a cat. I'll give you a room. What are you holding on to Peter for? She didn't know what kept her with that man. Is it attachment, love, or desire? What desire to be a mother? Maybe it's a good thing she lost the baby after that blow. Otherwise, she simply did not know how to live her life. Then this word often came up in her vocabulary, but in no way helped to determine the future. Maybe she should divorce Peter, move in with Tony, and go back to work when the bruises and abrasions went away. Julia had been stupid to say that out loud, naively assuming that no one was home. Peter called her in the evening and said that after work he was going to a bar with his friends to have a beer and let her do what she wanted. It's happened a lot in the last 6 months. Constant drunkenness of the husband, his delays at work, meetings with girls. And it wasn't always coworkers. More and more often prostitutes. But on this particular evening, he came home early and heard something that wasn't meant for his ears. I wonder if that's the Tony who's your housemate. Peter, you're home early. I wasn't expecting you, I'm sorry. I didn't even have time to heat up dinner. Yeah, I can see you weren't expecting that. I'm surprised you managed to get your lover Tony out of the house. Must have been the bed. Yeah, well, that's a coincidence. When her husband heard something that wasn't meant for him, and strangely enough, Juliet actually changed the linens before he arrived and threw them in the wash. It was an evening she would remember for a long time. The blow to the face, the fall, then the bump against the corner of the table and the ambulance crash, and then Tony the wheelchair and the incomprehension of how she could have gotten to this point. Julia, you should not despair. You are a doctor yourself, and you know very well that you can still get back on your feet. Tony was with her the whole time she was in the hospital, sitting by her side, spoon-feeding her, reading books, taking her for walks in a wheelchair. The doctors themselves did not understand how it could be that a young and healthy girl could lose her legs from a trivial fall. How could she lose her legs? They just stopped listening to her. She was fine. They said the bruises would go away sooner than her stomach, and she'd be back on her feet. Come on, Ethan, thanks for the encouragement. But I'm a medical professional myself, and I realize that when you're nervous, your legs can fail. So we just have to wait it out. And Julia, I gave you a sick leave so you wouldn't lose your job and have some money, and there. And if anything, I'll get a pension and go somewhere in the village to fresh air and fresh milk. With such words, she consoled herself, but she understood perfectly well she could not stand on her feet, and all her life would be confined to a wheelchair. That's how her husband ruined her youth, her health, and her desire to become a mother. When Peter beat her, Julia was pregnant. She didn't know it yet, but her husband's hand aborted her, robbing her of the joy of motherhood. It was later that she found out that while she was out, the doctors had given her a clean bill of health. I'm sorry, she's not you, you know. It was a little early. And how would you bear a pregnancy now? How would you raise a child? The girl herself did not know how she could just survive, bear, give birth, just to take care of the baby. What to say to all this? Maybe it's true that everything turned out that way then. After all, if Peter was raising his hand on her, then surely the baby would suffer as well. She just nodded her head and, turning the stroller, drove out of the chief physician's office. Her colleagues supported her, some with money, some with food, some just dropped by for a 5-minute chat. But Tony, it's not the same communication. It's not the same life I used to have. It's all that to me. Don't tell me you're sick of it and you're gonna go head first. But at the very least, off a bridge and into a river. What about me? You'll leave me to my fate, to the mercy of my accountants. Her friend could always cheer her up, if only for a moment, but it would make her smile. Although it was just Tony, whom Julia did not perceive as a man, as a lover and husband, although she realized he would be faithful not only as a friend, but also as a loving husband, a wonderful father, and even an excellent lover. Why did she think so? I myself did not understand. I'd never even slept with him once in my life. Life had given them only one kiss, but that was it. A friend. Nothing more. Tony, I don't know how I'm supposed to go on. Just sitting in my mom's 3-bedroom apartment like this. Going from room to room in a stroller, looking out the window and enjoying the sunshine. I'm just going crazy. And it's only summer. What happens when fall and winter come? I'll go crazy. Julia, I take it you don't want to come to me. Then I'll give you another idea. My grandmother left me a house in the country. True, it's not an apartment with Euro renovation, but the structure itself is good. There's a stove. And by the way, it'll be great for your spine and legs. Then there's water. By the way, it's brought into the kitchen, though it's cold. Then there's a small vegetable garden, but a huge garden. And Tony smiled at his memory of spending all his summers at his grandmother's house. Those were the best days of his life. He would run with his friends to the river, fish at the local lake. Paris apples in the garden were his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And how good was sleep in the hayloft? And how good was the bread from the oven? Tony, I'm not much of a villager, me and the village. Who will bring me firewood? Who will bring me groceries? I don't know, maybe I'll get sick. And then what? Well, you're a doctor yourself. And by the way, there's a neighboring village in need of a therapist. You know, in villages, doctors are a luxury. Will you be needed there? You'll be welcomed with open arms. The chairman has a car. He'll drive you around if necessary, and he'll buy food and bring it himself. I don't even know, though I'm sick of sitting around. I've been at home for the second year without any progress. And Julia shrugged her shoulders, tormented by doubts. I'm tired of sitting at home, but to go to the village as a doctor. Will she be able to cope? Who will help her? If anything, where? Who would want to take an invalid? Tell me, how does your disability affect your ability as a brilliant therapist? It doesn't. Patients come in, they tell you everything. You listen to their blood pressure, send them for tests, and then diagnose them. You're a brilliant diagnostician. To you, people sign up for 6 months in advance. The girl tilted her head with a smile. Yes, it was so long ago that she couldn't even remember. And Tony put his hand on her palm, resting on the warm shoulders that were wrapped around her legs, and looked into her eyes. Let's make a deal like this while it's fall-winter and still March. I think you'll stay at home, replenish your knowledge of medicine. What and how? But in April, I'll take you to the village, show you the house. Then I'll introduce you to the head of the local village council and show you the outpatient clinic. And then it's up to you. What do you want to do? I agree. Julia nodded and mentally imagined herself a village doctor. On the one hand, what does she have to lose? And so the job is a change of scenery, a salary after all. And the small disability pension she receives is not enough. And the girl nodded her head. It was good that at least she had him, or without Tony she would be completely lost. She didn't know what to do. Tony, I agree, but I don't think it will work out. That's a good idea. I'm handicapped. No. And the girl is a wonderful person and a professional. And just because you're in a chair, it doesn't mean anything to me. Tony, don't be ridiculous. You're a young, handsome guy, but why do you need me and what are you going to do? I won't give you an heir. I'll be a burden. Even though you're my friend, I won't be a burden to you. All right, I'll put it another way. If you were walking, you'd be with me, you'd leave Peter. If I walked, I'd leave him. I'd be naked. And then Julia cried. After all, about the fact that she lost a child and in the future, most likely, will not be able to have children. She hadn't told anyone. And now the memories came flooding out. There was no way she could stop the tears. A friend, don't shed tears for one fool. He's not worth it. I'm not talking about Peterloo tears. Tony, you know I haven't told anyone. You see, I can't have kids. Well, not like that. When Peter hit me and I fell, I had a miscarriage. But it was so small, I didn't know I was pregnant. The doctors cleaned it up, of course, but I'm just not sure I can get pregnant. You don't know, or that's what the doctors told you based on the test results. Toll, I'm an excellent diagnostician who can even diagnose himself. And I understand that even if you conceive, how to carry the baby. And who'd want to take a handicapped person? Only a pervert, probably. Julia, you must have really hit your head that hard then, on all your brains. I like you. Don't you realize that? And I want to be with you. Even if you spend the rest of your life spinning the wheels of that wheelchair, I'll carry you in my arms. You can't conceive. Let's do the echo. It won't help the adoption. It'll just be with me. The words sounded so convincing that the girl looked at her old friend for the first time. On the other side, as a man. She, wiping the tears from her face, took a tissue and blotted it again with water under the tap face. Tony, are you really, really serious about this? Is there any other way, or do you know me? It wasn't the first day, but she closed her eyes and rested her head on the back of the stroller, touching her head to the cold tile. It helped her to collect her thoughts, to focus, to realize from scratch to herself what she really cared about, what her exhausted body and soul wanted. Tony, I am grateful for your help and all that you have done and are doing. But let's not rush things. I need to figure things out on my own. She opened her eyes and looked at the guy who sat across from her and smiled his charming smile. Julia instinctively reached out to him and pinched both cheeks, but just like a small child. Yes, in fact, he was a little boy to her. Even though he was only a week younger than her, that's fine. Now let's get dressed and go for a walk. It's a beautiful September. We shouldn't miss what nature has to offer. It was a beautiful fall day, which Julia remembered for a long time. Because today she was reborn anew, looked at Tony in a new way, realized that she was still alive and that she could be. Even if not as a mother, but as a wife and a friend and a specialist. It was not without reason that she had studied for almost 6 years, and she had a lot of practice. A lot of people talk about her as a great professional. "Tony, you know what I was thinking," the girl said when the guy brought her home. "I guess I'll go into my old job this week and ask for a practice to restore my knowledge. I'll wash ducks and take test tubes if I have to. You don't need legs for that kind of work, but hands. You see, you're starting to think soberly, and everything will come to your senses. As for Peter, my advice to you is to sue him. No, you know what happened last year. The statute of limitations expired. That's what my chief of staff told me at work. Although, like you advised me to sue my husband. But I'll be honest, Peter was helping me out with money at the time. Yeah, and he crippled you. Okay, Julia, it's up to you. You're a smart girl." Yes, I am, Julia thought. When she washed in life under a stream of warm water, in the converted shower she went to sleep. If she was smart, she would definitely not allow that he raises his hand on her. Although what's done is done, you have to live with it, dearie. She didn't let Anya go. She's a wreck on the beach. And you're all at my wedding. The girl lay on the bed and thought maybe and really divorce Peter to live in the village, develop legs, and maybe even get pregnant. With whom? Anyone, even my old friend. There aren't many men around. I'm still young and attractive, and I'll get on my feet. So with these thoughts, she closed her eyes and instantly blacked out. She fell into a deep sleep without noticing. That night, she was running along the same beach again. Like back in first grade, when she was given a trip to the sea from the school. How blissful was that? To run on the sand like that, her feet, and we were languidly on the warm sea. And all around was sun, wind, and freedom. The girl didn't notice how she woke up crying. Her pillow was wet, and the clock showed only 3 o'clock. Julia rose on her arms and looked out the window. The moon was accurately illuminating her bed, and in its rays the fall leaves were twirling. It was like a waltz when 1, 2, 3 and twirled in a magnificent dance to the brilliant melody of Bach or Schubert. She adored music and more than once put at home records Soviet old turntable devalued around the room. But it annoyed Peter, although the girl herself did not understand why. Why does it annoy you? It's a classic. That's what annoys the classics. And I'm not all of them. I will never be like the common herd of sheep. I'm unique and special. And one day, in a fit of rage, he smashed her old record player, stomped on the records with his feet. And she stood there and watched and couldn't do anything. She didn't understand why. She just stood there and watched her hobbies being trampled on. And now she understood it was a kind of dependence on her husband, a manifestation of love, a sacrifice to her executioner. And Derry got something. Probably a new blank sheet of paper from which to write her future. And she lay down again, just turning the pillow wet side down. So what if it was wet? Tears are water, and water has a way of drying up and evaporating. And you, Peter, are definitely out of my life. Enough. Julia moved to a small village in the middle of April and did not regret it for a minute. Yes, it turned out to be quite a picturesque place, just as Tony had promised. A small house, but quite sturdy and cozy with 2 rooms and a hall, kitchen, and entrance hall. A large garden behind it, and around it endless fields covered with the first green grass. After the urban metropolis, it seemed like some other unreal world. Well, you're a lucky girl. Spring is early and warm this year, even without rain. By the way, here are the keys to the gate of the house. Keep and possess. And be your rightful owner, if I was on my feet. But I'm not much of a hostess, am I? There's a huge garden, and a vegetable garden. They need care and supervision. What can I do? You can keep your spirits up and at least look after it. Pick the fruit. And nature is like that. You know, smart aunt, look and the tree will give birth. Julia smiled at her friend and put her face under the warm spring breeze and the first real rays of sunshine. How nice is it here? It's not her apartment, where she was locked up like in a prison and didn't want to see anything or anyone. Now she could have a cat in the house. Maybe even some chickens. What's in there? She can feed them. And then there's the truth. What kind of household would have more rabbits? Can she buy milk from the neighbors? Tony, you know, I want to have chickens here, even a cat. And then you can help me with that. No problem. Come on, I'll introduce you to the head of the village council first. He, by the way, I saw in the car, came to the local medical center. And there on the spot we will organize and chickens, and firewood, and help around the house. The house is fine, but the yard should be cleaned up. Everything is overgrown. There the bushes grew wildly. Let's go. That's all later. Already on the spot at the local medical center I saw her. I noted that everything here is done quite well and clean to the best of my ability, and the equipment is not new, but working. The medicines are stacked properly, right? You can feel the hand of the manager, which pleased her immensely. So we'll work together, she thought. Tony, hi. What brings you here? The voice of a short, stocky man distracted the girl from her inner musings. Andrew, I brought you a general practitioner. If you take Julia under your care and protection, Andrew, the local council leader, will help you with everything. Good afternoon, the lovely Julia. I'm delighted to meet you and also delighted that we'll have our own therapist. Because you know how poorly we have it in this area. It's horrible. 2 nurses and a driver. That's the whole staff. How do you manage? Julia, I was genuinely surprised at the way the work is done here and how people manage without proper training. Beautiful Julia, I'm ready to carry you in my arms. Just stay with us. You're our salvation and our help. You're already settled in, by the way. Andrew naively thought she had already agreed. But how can you work in such a mode and with such a set? Julia just didn't understand and already inwardly doubted whether she should stay here. But she was not used to giving up, so she smiled at the head of the village council and simply said, Yes, Tony has taken me in his house, but I really need your help to organize the yard. It's overgrown. I need wood to clean the stove, and so to speak, my personal request, if you can, chickens and a ginger kitten. No problem, Julia. By lunchtime, you will have a man with mow the grass, clean the yard, then tomorrow we'll take care of firewood and stove, and they're smoothly moved to the garden. You have firewood for the first couple days? Yes, thank you. But we'll organize the chickens. We can ask around the neighbors. Didn't any of them grow up dry? My man will see the condition of the hen house, bring you some food, and we'll think about kittens. By the way, you would also need a small dog in the yard or in the house to run and bark like a bell. Julia smiled. It's true. Well, how in the village without a dog? No way. She already imagined how from the morning she would feed the hens, give porridge with dog's meat, how she would pet the cat and go to the garden to drink her morning coffee. No, her Julia shook her head and mentally already stayed here. After all, how stupid was she to have stayed in the city for so long? She should go to the air, to nature, develop her legs, and forget about Peter could already walk on her own 2 feet. I'm sorry, she's not up for anything you said. Andrew tilted his head closer so he could hear her better. No, I'm sorry, Andrew, it's nothing. Just thinking out loud. It's okay if I call you by your first name. I'd be happy for you to call me by my first name. That's so wonderful to hear. Andrew, from a girl like you. Come on, I'm not a girl anymore, and a wheelchair doesn't make me look good. You know, I've always been a sensible man. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The main thing is the mind, and the body is harmful. Excuse me, but how come Andrew shouldn't ask now? You'd better help the girl to get settled, and then you'll ask questions over a cup of tea. Tony made it clear to his head that the topic was delicate enough that he shouldn't be so gung-ho about the new therapist. Julia, I apologize if my question offended you. But you understand, we have a priest in the neighboring village, So he's talking about the beginning. Andrew, sorry, let's not talk about your mysticism. And all of a sudden, Tony tilted his head up to the sky and rolled his eyes. He had heard this story about the local priest from the head of his village more than once. They say he has the gift of healing, cures cancer, exorcises demons, and so on. People even come to him in droves, coming from cities and almost from neighboring countries. And here he is right next door. Just take it. Tony, that's where you're wrong. He gets people back on their feet, by the way. You should go to the temple. Oh, sorry, when you're settled in, I'll take you there. It's a beautiful place. Even artists come from the capital to sketch there. So you won't regret it. And communion with God, thank you. But probably a little later. And I can't say that I'm a particularly religious person. Doctors and priests are like two opposing camps, each with their own truth. Yeah, it's like Spartacus and Dynamo fans. I agree with you, dear girl, but still we come to it. But that's for later. Now let's go to my office. I'll feed you lunch and we'll talk about it. What do you want in the house and what do you want in your dispensary? It was near evening in the flooded house when Julia and Tony sat at the table and had dinner. We discussed working points, what was needed, how much, how to organize the work. It was like that. Tony, it's all so cool. I haven't felt this good since I entered the institute and met Peter. But she immediately faltered when she read the grimace of displeasure and misunderstanding on Tony's face. Yes, Isabella, the way he used to raise his hands at you. And he probably wanted to say that it was probably his fault she was in a wheelchair now. But he didn't. He felt sorry for hurting and so exhausted both soul and body. So he just got up and walked out of the room into the yard. It was so desirable to smoke. But the guy gave up this habit about 3 years ago, although a pack of cigarettes in his bag or in his car was always there. He went back to the car and rummaged through the glove compartment, pulled out cigarettes and took them out. One he lit. A few minutes later, he heard the squeak of wheels. That's right. Julia pulled into the street to see where he was. Tony, I'm sorry. I understand that mentioning Peter annoys you, but let's not make a big deal out of it. I'm trying to get over him, but so far I'm not doing a very good job. Yeah, I know, but I hate to see you like this. Then don't look. Then why did you bring me here to get out of my sight? She swung the baby carriage around angrily and, misjudging her strength and the country roads, tipped over, falling sideways. Tony did not have time to pick her up, and Julia fell to the ground with a thud and flew out of the stroller, crying like a little girl from resentment and pain. No pain at all. More like resentment that Tony had said that to her. He knew how she reacted to every remark he made. It was one thing for a stranger to say it. It's another thing if it's said by a friend who knows everything and anything. Julia, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry. Darling, you're my man. Tony, how can I forgive you when she was choking with anger and tears? If you blame me for my disability, how do you work with people after that? How do you get them back on their feet? Well, I'll tell you straight up that you're in the way now. Your own professionalism, work with disabilities, or you or me to tell you how many great doctors, being almost at death's door, put others on their feet. And this village needs your bright head. There are 2 assistants plus a driver with a car. She looked up at him from below and could not hold back the tears that rolled down her cheeks. Toto neatly put the stroller, also neatly put the girl in it, and without saying a word, just drove her friend into the house. Already there he transferred her to a bench near the stove and began to take off his sneakers, then dirty and muddy pants, sweater, despite Julia's fierce resistance. So don't even think about resisting. I'll bring you, by the way, the other day, washed and connected. There's water in the house, so you won't have to do it by hand. Nothing fell off the stroller, but the crown won't. Julia, but really, I'm sorry about what I said. It won't happen again. Let me put you on the stove to warm up and try to sleep. I'll stay with you for a couple of days while you get organized. What about your work? She looked at her friend in surprise. She knew how important it was to him. I just took a week at my own expense. I'll take another if I have to. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. It's important for me to get you settled in here and be comfortable. That you have everything you need. You've got firewood and food for at least a couple weeks. You got a cat and a dog and chickens. What else do you want? Then my boss knows exactly where I am and who I'm with. And by the way, he says hello and thank you very much. Thanks for what? I didn't remind my boss of Tony, but I just didn't understand what he was thanking her for. Yeah, he brought his wife to you, who couldn't get a diagnosis. And you knew right off the bat that she had cancer. And it's a good thing they detected it in time, punctured her, didn't let her die a horrible death. What's he talking about? Come on, it's my job. By the way, did you know that dogs and cats can detect cancer cells by smell? I've heard of it. I've even read about it. It's like the Americans have adopted this technique in hospitals. Now we're not America. At least we've got this outpatient clinic to deal with. Okay, I know there's a few charitable organizations in town. I'll contact them. I'll get them to drop off some equipment, medical supplies, and bandages. I understand summer's a hot time in the village. Oh yes, you'll have a lot of work to do. This one's got blood pressure, the other one's got early slopes, the third one's got shovel blisters, and so on and so forth. Wait till you see this. The local women from the neighboring villages will start asking you to marry their sons and grandsons. Believe me, that's a separate topic of conversation. Tony, are you really joking? The girl looked at her friend attentively and on her hands. Having risen, settled down on the stove. No, believe me, in our villages there are 5 women per 10 men. That's the statistics. And believe me, your legs are not a judgment. If a man loves you, it's in a city where there's only silicone and eyelash extensions. Guys choose their girlfriends on principle. How much money is invested in her? And here in the villages is important natural beauty without embellishments. And believe me, for many your legs will not be an obstacle. Like for you? Did you just realize that now? Tony smiled and gave her a big, and in the rank to cover her legs and stroked her hand. He had loved this girl for a long time, even after she stopped walking. And the disability hadn't turned him away in any way, hadn't broken him for a minute. Only gave him an even greater desire to care for her, not to become her protector. I am your knight, and may it be without end. But at that moment, the front doors in the hay creaked and soft, light footsteps were heard. Tony and Julia looked at each other. They were definitely not expecting anyone today, and now they had an uninvited visitor. Good evening to this house. Neighbor Wendy's voice sounded loud and even resounding throughout the small house. Good evening, Grandma Wendy. How are you? How's your health? Tony was glad to see a neighbor he hadn't seen in 5 years. And by your prayers, Tony, I heard you had a doctor come to see us. That's good. We need doctors. I hear you need a cat for your house. Well, I brought you a kitten from my cat Red. Will you take it? We'll take Wendy. I don't know what your middle name is, I'm sorry. Julia said to her, looking out for matches. So it's you. Good evening again. Just call me Wendy. What's your name? Julia. Just Julia. I'm sorry I'm not meeting you on my feet. It's just my feet on wheels over there in the corner. The grandmother immediately realized that the new medically disabled. But she didn't show her surprise with any words or facial expressions. She was a wise woman who had delivered babies, but now she was no longer in good health, although she still had her wit and experience. It's all right, Julia, I understand you're Polish by nationality. Not by nationality, but by my father. He's Polish, and my mom is a native of St. Petersburg. So that's how I got my international mix. It's okay. It's good to have 2 nations together. And for your legs. But don't worry, we'll put you on them. Get out of here. You know, we've got a lot of holy places here. And the land is fertile. Build it with your bare feet and you'll feel the power coming from it. Wendy, do you really understand that Julia is a doctor and all that? It's science. And here I am with my superstitions. Here's my superstition. The red cat will be, believe me, a great rat catcher. And the grandmother took out a beautiful red kitten, which she immediately handed to me with joy. The girl almost jumped from the stove on her own 2 feet. After all, she had dreamed of such a miracle for a long time. And here it was, brought straight home. The cat looked at her carefully and flashed, started quietly muttering Julia under a warm hand stroked, lice it on the head. What a big kitten. Can you feel the breed? I've got a cat. What do you want? My son brought her to me. He says she's a purebred Siberian cat. Mirka's alive, but my son's long gone. That's the legacy of my boy, and the old woman turned away. I quietly wiped away a tear, reflected on life, and Tony and Julia just fell silent for a moment. Wendy, do you happen to have any extra chickens for the household? We need to teach the metropolis the joys of rural life. Yes, please, even 10, I'll pay you the money. The girl was glad that her neighbor could help her so easily. Although, Tony, I don't have a chicken coop yet, and I don't have any feed. I do have chickens. I'll be able to give them to you in 2 weeks. They're still small. Let them grow up. My chickens are great dryers. So you'll always have homemade crates. Can you order feed from our head? He buys for the whole village. Thank you. Why did you have your blood pressure taken? Or do you have any complaints? Julia's professional sense has kicked in. My girl, I came to you not as a patient, but as a neighbor. But I'll come to the reception, but only as soon as you get settled both at home and in your hospital. Then I'll complain. But for now, she put milk, bread, and homemade on the table for you. The old woman put a bag on the table and began to take out food from it. By the way, Tony, give me a small plate for the cat. I'll pour him some milk. Let him get used to his new home. And if the little guy runs away, don't worry. He'll probably run to his mama's house and talk to the young ones for a few more minutes. Grandma went home and Julia and Tony went to bed. What was there to say? The day had been full of events, of emotions, of getting to know each other. But strangely enough, it was in this house on the stove that Julia slept as sweetly as she had never slept. Even at home, she dreamed of the sea. And once again, she was running down the beach on her own feet. Julia, wake up, girl. What's wrong? Tony's voice sounded as if from far away, and the girl didn't immediately realize she was still asleep. Tony, I'm sorry. What happened? The girl's voice sounded sleepy and somewhat annoyed. After all, she was sleeping so sweetly. You were crying in your sleep and moaning. I woke you up, but I'm sorry. I dreamt of the sea and the beach. I was running on the sand. It's a good thing I woke you up. Are you going to lie down again, or are you going to get up? And what time is it? I didn't look at the clock and was surprised. It was almost 12 o'clock. Wow, she's been asleep for almost 12 hours. Oh, I'm so hot. I've never slept that long. This place is really nice. It's easy to sleep. No nightmares. Tony, help me into the stroller. I gotta get up, wash up, feed the cat, and I gotta go to the outpatient clinic. You probably forgot it's Sunday. I fed the cat a long time ago. As far as sleeping on the stove while I'm here, that's fine. But when I'm gone, you'll have to sleep on the bed. Who's gonna carry you back and forth? Only me. Come on, go wash up and have breakfast or lunch. I've got it all ready. Yeah, Peter never fed me breakfast. He waited for me to cook. And if you don't, it's on you, Julia. You get a big slap in the face. And here it's just like that. Breakfast on the table and the cat's fed. And the furnace is fueled. Yeah, Tony, you know how to make a woman feel good. And without straining and without thinking about intimacy with the usual movement of your hands. Julia pulled up his pants, changed his shirt, and then slipped matches, for example, and pulled up a wheelchair, sat down through. First one leg, then the other, and then she drove out into the yard. Isn't it beautiful? It's beautiful. The words from the famous movie came to mind. But what can you do if it was really so? And Julia smiled quietly to herself. The cat immediately jumped into her arms and looked carefully into her face, as if asking what plans her mistress had for today. And there are no plans. It will be necessary, though, to inspect the garden, the henhouse, and everything in the yard. You're with me, kitten, as if understanding her words. Immediately the motivation hinted, jumped from her hands, and with all the vigor rushed into the garden. The garden to see the henhouse. The yard is good, but do you even eat, then? Tony stood on the doorstep and looked at his friend carefully. He regretted that he had asked her to live in the village like that, but it had seemed like a wonderful idea to him at the time, away from her ex-husband. Fresh air, natural products, no gas. But now he was standing there, thinking that he should first put the house in order, think about the car, refrigerator, groceries, and then take the invalid, how she would be here on her own. You know, she doesn't have to. I'll leave you my old cell phone. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten a new one yet. You'll call me every morning and evening. You promise. I bought it myself. I had to get the house cleaned up before I could bring you here. But now I'm here eating fine eyeballs and talking to you. But Tony, don't think about it. Trust me, I'm not that weak. That's a first. Plus there's a job, and there's people, and a car. So who's there to turn to in case of emergency? You know, it's a good thing the job came right out of the blue. In fact, it's a plus for you. In time, maybe then you'll go to the city. It's better to translate than to start from scratch. I said that and only then thought that words could offend my friend. So immediately bit my tongue and simply ducked into the plate. And Julia herself realized that the guy wanted the best. But it turned out as usual. Oh well. I mean, maybe you should be less reactive to words. You gotta get used to it. Girl to the fact that you will not get up. But at the second legs, as if pierced by a charge of current, and Julia, from surprise, shrieked and dropped the fork. What happened? Tony stood up from his seat in surprise. Nothing. It was just something that pricked Julia's heart. She didn't want to say that her legs were electrocuted. Don't entertain the hope that they might regain their sensitivity. That's the connection I had to the temple. Well, the one the head of the collective farm mentioned yesterday. In principle, it's possible. But let's do it next weekend. Just this morning, a man from the village council came to see the hen house. He said it was good, only that it needs some repairs and left to get some materials. So we should be here by 2 o'clock or so. So we go to the temple or wait for the master to repair the hen house. But of course, the master is more important. And my future ones don't need a decent house. So they had breakfast, though it was more like lunch. They chatted merrily. And the girl more and more caught herself thinking that here she would settle down. And this place would bring her a lot of happiness, although she did not realize that here she could meet not only her happiness, but also revelations. The days flew like minutes of the week, like hours. Tony returned to town, promising to come back on weekends, and she stayed on her own. But why on her own, she said to herself as she escorted Tony over the threshold. There's the cat, and then there will be more hens. Now I'll have to get used to living in the village. Soon there will be hens. Really, Carrot the cat flashed and lost his head, and her chin. Yeah, here comes reality. But it's time to get started on the house. And there maybe she'll really get up and start walking Carrot Top. Why don't I go see a priest? Well, if it doesn't help you get back on your feet, then at least you'll confess. The cat trustingly knocked, as if agreeing, and began to rub her face, mewing in her ear his song. What a marvelous animal. Yes, and what a wonderful song. And anyway, why was she so opposed to coming here? I guess it's the fear of change that stops a lot of people. Though now she realized it was all for her own good. Rural life and everyday life spun the girl, and the work carried her away. So Julia sometimes forgot that she was in a wheelchair. What's to say? The talent of an excellent therapist and experienced doctor make her famous. To the new doctor lined up lines of sufferers. Julia, you're our star. The head of the village council once told her. By the way, read about you in the newspaper. And he handed her a newspaper bought in a neighboring district. And indeed, on the first page, there was a note that the new doctor of the village of such and such puts not only people on their feet, but is considered a great diagnosis. And the reason for this is one case in the village, a trivial case. But probably it is from such situations that local legends and stories are born. In one resident of a neighboring village, a girl first grader fell ill. For a long time, they could not establish an accurate diagnosis. The little girl was bothered by a woody cough. Everyone thought a cold, but it turned out to be a heart problem. And it's good that the diagnosis could be made in time, when the problem can be solved with medication and did not have to resort to surgery. There are many such situations, and there will be more. Julia thought. After all, she loved these places and these hard-working, kind people. Andrew, could you do me a favor? One day, Julia asked the head of the village council. Yes, my dear, beautiful visitor. Lord of my rheumatism, tamer pressure all I can. Could you take me to that temple you spoke of, where Father John rules? Is it true that he has some kind of power? Julia, and you tell me this. Are you a doctor? No, I'm sorry, he may have powers. What kind of power? But I've never heard anything about it. You really believe that? I'm sorry for asking. You know, your grandmothers and neighboring villagers have been telling me all about him. Believe it or not, maybe we should go. It's a good thing. Let's go. We'll be at the service this Sunday. See our beauty. And communion with God, you know. I don't know, but maybe he'll help me so I can walk again. Do you think I'll be your eighth wonder of the world? The priest laid his hands on her, and she got up and walked. Julia herself did not realize at that moment why she had spoken so disparagingly about the priest, about faith and God. Her mother and grandmother of the youngest had accustomed the girl to faith, but apparently the Soviet authorities and her studies at medical school had nullified all faith in miracles. Andrew stood next to her, looked at her intently, and asked Julia, "How did it happen that you are in a wheelchair?" "You won't believe it, but my husband beat me. I fell, hit myself, and lost not only my legs, but also my unborn child. I apologize if I hurt your feelings as a believer, but when a husband beats his wife, somehow my faith in God and higher powers fades to nothing. I do. You know, in our temple, Father John was disabled himself. Yeah, well, don't look at me so skeptical. Just like you had problems with your legs. From what I hear, he didn't ride in a wheelchair, but when he took it, it went away. But if you don't believe me, I won't bother you with these stories, but I'll take you. And I should go to the service myself. I've got things to do." And the head of the village council left her outpatient clinic. But on the threshold, he stopped and turned around and asked, "Did you and your husband get married?" Julia did not say anything. She just nodded her head negatively, and the man didn't say anything, but just lowered his head and went about his business. Yes, life is such an unpredictable thing that the greatest sorrow and the greatest happiness can happen to anyone. But already on Sunday at 9 o'clock, Andrew's car was parked near her house, and he, with a smile on his face in a new suit, knocked on the door of her Julia. "It's Andrew, open up. Taking you to the temple today, Andrew. Come in. I'll make tea and come out to you. You can stay in the kitchen. I've made pancakes. We'll have breakfast, if you don't mind." "I don't mind. But to tell you the truth, I ate a lot this morning, and we still have to drive 30 minutes on our roads. So if you don't want to be late for the most solemn part of the service, let's go well. I, in principle, also ate in the morning, so, as they say, load me into your carriage and let's go. My car hasn't been bought yet. It's probably waiting somewhere in the showroom, but with a salary like this, I won't see it soon." She was trying to make a joke, but it didn't work. "Julia, if you need transportation, don't hesitate to speak up. I can just forget to offer you my carriage, as you said. Because if you need to go to the city or something, just a whistle. Thank you, I'll say. I don't know how to whistle, to be honest." So they drove to the neighboring village. They joked and laughed merrily. Andrew understood perfectly well that he was carrying a fragile girl, plus an invalid, so he tried to drive slower so as not to shake on the local roads. Julia understood this and mentally thanked him, thinking that her ex-husband would probably have driven like a daredevil, not caring about her needs. As they entered the neighboring village, Andrew steered the car steadily along the southern road. In a couple of minutes, they were standing near a wooden church. What kind of church is it, though? A real work of art. It was a rather large church, made of a solid log cabin with high domes and gilded crosses. It is really beautiful, as birch trees grow around. By the lake, you can see the forest not far away, and all around are greenery, blue sky, and curious people's eyes. Julia, don't pay attention to people. Everyone may be staring at you right now. That's why I warn you at once not to take slanted glances to heart. The main thing is not to touch them with your hands. I'm used to everything else. Then let me help you into the stroller, grab my neck. Julia put her arms around Andrew's neck and mentally noted to herself, "He smells good. And how strong are his arms? You're a fool. In a wheelchair, you're looking at a man. But why not?" She looked up and their eyes met. They met. How blue are his eyes? That's just creepy. Andrew, how blue are your eyes? Like the sky, but you didn't come here to see my eyes. And people are already looking at us funny, even though you said to ignore them, or did you? Julia grinned playfully and looked at the man. He was old enough to be her older brother or even her father. But right now she looked at him like a woman who had long ago forgotten how to flirt, but remembered that she could be beautiful and desirable. A merry gaggle of cats, and the one for whom one rolls down mountains, performs feats, and all that. But really, as she looked around at the people standing around the temple, she noticed the people squinting at them. She clenched her fists, driving her nails under the elbow of her wheelchair, and raised her head high. Andrew, it's a good thing you can carry me in this wheelchair, or I probably wouldn't have made it. Or at least turn around and drive away. Well, if you could handle it, you could handle it. But as for leaving, yeah. But I want to show you our pride, this temple from the inside, and introduce you to Father John. He's your age, by the way. And if I'm not mistaken, this man used to be in the military. Now he's ruling. Before she could finish, a priest came around the corner and waved. Andrew waved back. There's our spiritual father. Good afternoon, Andrew. Good afternoon. And to you, Julia. It's good to see you in my temple. How do you know my name? Although, pardon me, that's probably a silly question for a priest. It's not stupid at all, but I'll tell you right away. It's not mystical. It's just that I've heard a lot about you. I was thinking of coming to see you myself. Julia wanted to make a joke, but then he didn't. It's not appropriate to joke about such things with a priest. No, just to get acquainted. After all, medicine and religion should go together. Don't you think so? I suppose so. But I'm sorry, Father, I was brought up in the era of developed socialism. That's why you're not friendly with religion. But still I came here. I've been told a lot about you. Probably that I have some kind of healing gift, the priest replied. But that's more your paraphilia. By the way, and about you are legends among my parishioners. You accurately diagnose, so it's kind of similar. But that's not what we're talking about. Come on in. The service is about to begin, and the priest gestured both of them into the temple. When Julia drove carefully into the wooden church, she was surprised by the beauty she had not seen for a long time, even in large churches. And here in an ordinary village, the icons are painted gold, and the right? Yes, her grandmother was probably right. When priests would walk like Christ with one stick and in one robe, then faith would be strong. But she did not say anything, but just stood on the baby carriages near the entrance and listened to John's sermon. Indeed, this priest had a lot of eloquence. I guess I could immediately see the KGB school, where rhetoric was at the highest level, as well as the ability to persuade. Well, that's probably the reason why there are such legends about this priest. But it's their bread, their job to turn Orthodox and unbelievers alike to Christ, to strengthen the faith and whatever it takes. What do you think of my sermon? Father John came up to Nina after the service and looked at her carefully. You know, it was impressive. I think even the most unbelievers would definitely become your parishioners. But I don't know if I'd be one of them. But faith is a thing. You know, you have to come to it. So no one's gonna force it on you. Although I'd love to have you among my friends at least. I'm glad, and frankly, I'd love to accept your offer of friendship. You might actually. Come see me in the outpatient clinic. As your blood pressure goes. Maybe I should prescribe you some vitamins. You have kids. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a silly question. You're a priest. It's all right, don't worry. But I'll definitely come back tomorrow if you don't mind. Julia nodded her head and only wanted to turn around and go to Andrew's car as her gaze fell on a man. Strange, she noted to herself. A painfully familiar back and gait in general. But she shook her head and drove on to the car of the head of the village council, justifying this similarity. And what can he do? My Peter is mine. She still considered him hers, though she had long ago tried to forget him. They had parted under not the best of circumstances, and Julia still wore the ring. And she can't even get to the registry office to file for divorce. Is it worth getting a divorce? Maybe everything can go on as it is. She grinned wickedly and let him chase me if he thinks of getting married a second time. I don't think he'll ever get a divorce. Never. Julia, I hope you didn't wait long for me. Did Andrew's voice bring her out of her own angry musings? No, it's okay. I'll at least get out of my little world called home. Work is great. How's the service, by the way? Hope you're not disappointed with your time. No, Andrew, if you don't mind coming down here, you should definitely take me with you. I really like it here. It's beautiful. You can really come here for sketches. A lot of people come here. Imagine, by the way, some of the paintings depict me. Just like our priest. Andrew, have you ever had it in this place that you look at a person from the back, and it seems to you that you have already seen him somewhere? I mean, it could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be here and now. And that you've met someone you know. Julia did not say that she had seen her husband's back, but just kept silent. She didn't pursue the topic herself, but the unpleasant residue remained. Though business and care of the house and the outpatient clinic made her forget about it. Although soon the girl again experienced a lot of unpleasant moments. And the reason for this was the fall holiday, which in the village it was customary to celebrate at the very beginning in the temple. Who does not know this holiday, when in the temple are carried to sanctify apples, honey, and nuts, which are loved by many? Julia, let's go to the temple. We should consecrate these first apples from your garden. You've done well, by the way. You've trimmed the trees, removed the old bushes and branches. Kudos and honor to you. But Andrew, it's not without your help. Julia once again caught herself thinking that Andrew liked her more and more, although the man himself was polite and all. He didn't try to pester her or somehow show his own desire, only the maximum of politeness, attention, and help. Though in fact, for that she was already grateful to him. After all, few people cared about her. Tony didn't count in this case. Yes, I take a little credit for that too. But it's still your labor, which is worth appreciating. And the cat has grown hens everywhere in the yard, and in the house you can feel the hand of the mistress. It's true that the house and the garden were cleaned. Everywhere you could feel the attention and care in all this. Julia put not a part of herself, but all of herself, and nature gave her much more gratitude in return. They drove to the temple and sweetly chatted about everything. And the girl did not even suspect what could happen to her that day, when Andrew helped her to get out of the car and get on the stroller. Julia turned it around with the usual movement of her hands and drove to the temple. Not waiting for her counselor, she knew full well that Andrew would not enter until he put the car in the church. In fact, he tried to drive as close to the entrance as possible to make it easier for his companion to get in. When Julia drove into the church, she looked for Father John with her eyes. The service had not yet begun, and it was possible to talk to him a little, as was usual before every service. But when she heard his familiar voice and turned around, and she almost fell off the stroller, Julia just couldn't believe her eyes. Standing next to the priest was her husband, and he was crying. He was really crying. Julia could see large tears rolling down his face, and his hands were trembling folded in the area of his chest. She sat in the stroller and could not believe her eyes. Her husband was here in the temple crying. There was no way that could have happened. Peter had never attended church, especially during their entire time together. He didn't cry. She hadn't seen a single tear on his face. Even when his mother had died, he'd been stingy with tears at the funeral, as well as any emotion. But could it be her hallucinations? A trick of the eye? Yes, it couldn't be. She remembered this man better than anyone else. And it hadn't been long enough since they parted to forget his profile, that favorite leather jacket of his. Come up and say hello. Why not? After all, she didn't really owe him anything. He's the one who got her into this state. Peter, is that you? Julia's words sounded to the man out of the blue and like a judgment on Julia. Is it really you? Have I changed so much that you don't recognize me? Or have I aged? Although the stroller does not add beauty, but I think you can recognize my face. What brings you here? I hope it's not to follow me. No, I'm sorry. I'm here to see my Father John on a personal matter. H. My husband has a personal matter that has nothing to do with taking care of his invalid wife. Julia, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry you're in a wheelchair like this. But I'm here about something else. What is it? Julia didn't understand why she was interested in the private life of her husband, who had made her an invalid, but she couldn't stop herself. She didn't care about his problems. But most likely, it was a woman's curiosity that prevailed in this case. But her husband, strangely enough, did not react harshly to her harsh statement and just looked at her pitifully and walked away. Wow, thought Julia, what had happened to her husband? Previously, he would have simply torn her apart for such words. But now the girl did not know how to react. She didn't expect herself to be so brave. But turning around, she saw behind the back of Andrew Rural Head, who stood and with a hard expression, looked at all this. His gaze was the same as her ex-husband's. But, Andrew, you have heard everything, but I can introduce you in absentia. This is my ex-husband, or rather, still husband. We're just not divorced. And he's the reason I'm sitting here in a wheelchair right now. The man smiled and squatted down in front of Nina. He took her hands in his and kissed them, not realizing what he was doing. And then said quietly, you know, if he had said something bad to you, I would have killed him for sure. Here's a cross for you. And he crossed himself, and then he kissed her hands again. Andrew's treatment of her simply shocked her into a state of mild shock, and she blushed, like a freshman getting her first taste of light wine and kissing a guy. Like a grown woman, and so blushed with shame, Julia thought and simply tried to take her hands from Andrew's strong palms. You don't have to take your hands away. I didn't hurt you. By the way, John's father told me that you can, in fact, be put back on your feet. I wonder how. She wanted to be sarcastic, like, is this place prayed for? Or is there a special prayer? But she didn't. She didn't want to spoil such a beautiful moment. And by the way, she didn't care that people were standing around and looking at this couple as if they were mesmerized. The head of the village council and the invalid. No, he has a masseur he knows. He's a practicing guru or something, but he's the one who got him back on his feet after the tragedy. That's how I remember it. You said he was in the missile force somewhere, and not in the missile force, but in security, guarding a secret facility in a space town. Well, I guess it's not that simple. By the way, he promised to give me his phone number, but he said that he would contact him first to clarify whether he accepts patients or not. Where is he now? Do you think I have any chance of walking on my own legs? I think it's worth using any method, and as a medical man, you should know that. Now let's go into town. I know a great taco place, and they have a real Mexican chef. At the mention of food, Julia realized how hungry she was, and her stomach was charging so treacherously that the sound must have been heard by everyone around her. Yep, looking around. She looked at the people and saw that everyone was looking at her like she was a free circus. So be it. Andrew is a fine man and a fine man. Surely he's the one every woman from small to large is pining for. She proudly raised her head and turned the stroller and went to the car. Look, I'm not so helpless. Yes, the afternoon and evening had been charming. Great company and delicious tacos, a cozy cafe and Andrew nearby. But the minutes flew by like crazy. And only in the evening Julia remembered that she had to work tomorrow, and she looked at her watch and shrieked quietly, "Oh, I have to work tomorrow, and it's so late. And the cat's home fed. And the chickens are affected by the costs of city life, when you are not responsible for anyone but yourself. Don't worry about it. I called your neighbor's grandmother, and she's been feeding everyone. I've got a car, and I'll take you home. How are you enjoying your evening, by the way? Andrew, you don't know how good I feel. I had a wonderful evening here." That's good. So you were able to forget about your husband, erase him from your memory. And that was the truth. She didn't even think about Peter for a minute. And Tony had kind of faded into the background. And the strangest thing was that she enjoyed Andrew's company. And the man himself seemed to enjoy her company. Andrew, please tell me if you like me. That's when I just sit like this and my mangled legs and the wheelchair are not visible. Warmed by wine and the attention of a handsome man, Julia didn't know why she asked that. Maybe she wanted more attention? Maybe to believe that she was attractive as before. You know, Julia, you are a very beautiful young woman, and I will try to put you on your feet if you will let me, and then it's up to you to decide how we're going to proceed. She nodded her head and looked down at him, thinking how not only was he nice, but also sensible. He didn't say he'd be with her forever. He didn't swear to be faithful to her love like Tony had. He just gave her a choice, but he said he liked her openly, which she couldn't help but be pleased about. And it was at that moment that she realized her past was behind her, gone with her head. Like her Peter did today. Andrew, thank you so much. You know, your words are like a prayer to me. And I just want to do whatever it takes to get my legs walking again. And you're right, then we'll see what we can do. What do you mean? That's it for now. Let's go home. He said it so warmly. It made her want to go home with him. But so far it was just her fantasies and daydreams. Though why dreams? She'd have to get back on her feet. And then maybe she'd ride in Andrew's car and look out the window at the trees and the houses of the field flying by. And it would be quiet and peaceful, as it had never been, not even with Tony, who she knew was wholeheartedly in love with her. And how right he'd been when he'd said that her legs would be no barrier to a man in love who wanted her. What's on your mind? My dear sorceress. And why did Julia smiled and looked at the small man sitting next to her, who was ready to outshine the whole world for her? Well, I don't know, I just wanted to call you that. He turned and looked at her with his sky blue eyes. About what? You know, I just want to keep going, keep going, keep going. No. I should stop at a gas station, have a coffee, eat a hot dog, and then get on the road again. Yes, that's an interesting thought. But I, like you, love the road, especially at night or in the evening. When the sun goes down or it's already set, and you're just driving along not knowing where you're going. I hope you know where we're going now. Yes, I think your Carrot Top is waiting for his mistress. And indeed, the cat was already sitting on the porch looking at her, and the chickens were already sitting on the roost, fed and fed by a kind neighbor. Andrew carried her into the house in his arms, then brought the stroller in, asked if he needed anything, and left. And really, she did not need anything now, but just to be alone with her thoughts, to think about how to live on. And what's next? We have to go to a masseur and work on her legs. You're a medical professional, Julia. You do the thinking. She washed her face and lay down on the bed Tony had made. And just when she closed her eyes, she fell into a dream. It had been a long time since she had slept like this, without dreams, without emotions, and almost until noon Julia simply slept. Although it was Monday, and she always set her alarm clock for 7 o'clock, but that one wasn't new to her, where a knock on the door made her wince, being floored. It's Andrew. I didn't catch you at work, and I can't reach you. You're fine. Andrew, come in. It's not locked. I overslept. I'm fine. I was getting worried. Why didn't you tell me you had the day off, by the way? I wasn't planning on it. I don't know why you decided that. I didn't decide that for you. We were seen at the temple yesterday. Then we went to the restaurant. And when I came to your office, I was told on the spot why we're not together, and why am I asking where Julia is? Wow. So by country standards, we're a couple now. And it turns out we are? But by the way, I don't mind this way of putting it. And I'm pleased that we're almost married. You do know, by the way, that we went to the priest yesterday to arrange the wedding? Even so, Julia really didn't even realize that people thought like that. But the thought itself really pleased her. At that moment, she did not feel her own disability and inferiority. And the very fact that she could be with this handsome man was already inspiring. Yeah, we both know what happened yesterday. But be prepared to be questioned about the details of your future celebration. Thank you for the heads up. But Andrew, I'm interested in another fact. Julia, with a habitual movement of her hand, moved the stroller to herself, threw one leg over, then with her whole body moved into it and threw the other leg over. It was as familiar to her as brushing her teeth or peeling potatoes would be to a normal person. I see you don't need any help. You're doing quite well on your own. Yes, it's a habit and a year of training. But that's not what we're talking about. Andrew, I'm interested in something else, and you can help me figure it out, no problem. Say what you need to say. I saw my husband at the temple yesterday. But why did he come? That's what I need to find out. You can approach John. I'm on good terms with him. Unless it's a secret confession, I suppose. Oh, and just so he's not in doubt. Here's my wedding photo and my passport, which still says we're husband and wife. You can tell in my story that he beat me and now he's here. What's his goal? Maybe he wants to do it again. He wants to hit you. Are you serious? Yeah, the whole village is gonna stand up for you. Andrew, I understand. And that my husband can do anything. He's the kind of man who will stop at nothing. That's one thing. And in terms of my defense, do you have to move in with me or do I have to move in with you? That's great. Let's get your chickens and your cat, get your stuff and go. I have a big house. I don't think Tony would mind. And I feel more comfortable on neutral ground. So if you could just ask John why my husband came here. That's why I came here, by the way. With all this talk, I've forgotten why I came to see you. He told us yesterday that the two of us could come to him. So let's get ready. I'll make you a quick breakfast and get you to the priest. I'm not going yet. Andrew quickly made sandwiches, brewed tea, and invited her to the table. Yeah, look how thoughtful he is. Just like Tony. There's a lot of people to choose from. Are you smiling? That's wonderful. It means you're in a good mood, and your husband's presence around doesn't dampen your mood. Julia, excuse me, why haven't you divorced yet? If you don't want to, you don't have to answer. No, it's simple and trivial. I myself was not eager to file for divorce. And with my legs, I don't have much time to go through the courts. And your husband. But I guess his pride didn't allow him to stoop to the level of having to deal with the issue himself. I'll say this, probably we were both satisfied with this state of affairs. Would you like a divorce? The man's voice sounded calm, but inside him everything was raging. Yes, and understandably, if she does not want to divorce, then, apparently, still loves her husband, and he simply has nothing to do around. And if he does, he has every chance to make her happy. Although, on the other hand, with or without a husband, he will try to make this woman happy. What do you think, Andrew? I think so. Julia nodded her head and ate her sandwich and went outside. She really wanted to divorce her husband, but she was afraid to do it herself. No wonder. After all, Julia knew her husband well, and if he did not like the idea of divorce to be beaten again, and there was no telling what the consequences might be. Andrew left the house, closed the door, and looked carefully at the back of the girl sitting in the wheelchair. Only now he began to understand a little what she had been through. Julia, let me help you sit down later behind the wheelchair and let's go. And you can ask John yourself, by the way, why did your husband come? She nodded her head and with a familiar movement of her arms around Andrew's neck, who moved her to the front passenger seat. Then he loaded the stroller into the trunk and got behind the wheel. The man had been examining his son for a long time, but was all afraid to show his feelings. Katya, for the last few days, caught her interested look at himself. Of course, it was possible to delicately ask what yes, how. But in the very case intervened the ex-husband of her Julia. Although what ex, if they are still not divorced, and damn him. He came here for a reason, and he went straight to John. John went straight for it. Maybe he really wants Julia back. Have you thought about it? Switching to you. Asked Andrew that your husband Peter wants you back, and therefore went to the priest, but so to speak, with an authority figure to influence you. I thought so. But I know my husband well. He's not used to acting like this. He's rude and mean, even though he has 2 degrees. He was brought up in an intelligent family. But if anything is out of his control, he'll just raise his hand and beat you and that's it. Any constructive conversation is out of the question. That's why I was confused yesterday by his behavior and his reaction to my words. Calm, even humility, and no rudeness. Well, his people were there, witnesses. Maybe that stopped him. Oh no. He beat me up in front of witnesses once. And you can't imagine, it was a special treat for him. It was his way of elevating his status, showing he's not beholden to anyone. Yeah, well, if that's the case, his behavior does look suspicious at the very least. I'm surprised you guys made it through the night on your own. All right, we'll go. I'll talk to John. Half an hour later, they were sitting in the courtyard in the priest's gazebo, and John was putting together the table and putting on the samovar. How good of you to come. Just like that without a call. You invited us yesterday, so how could you not come? By the way, Father, Julia has a question for you. You see, here's the thing. Yesterday you were approached by her husband, who, in fact, is responsible for the tragic confluence, for the fact that she does not walk. What kind of husband? Tall, swarthy, in a gray leather jacket. He arrived in a white car. You must remember him. He's quite stately and not like the locals. Julia, I have a lot of people coming to see me, so don't take that as praise. But I really might not have remembered him. No, you were just pulling up. And at that moment he turned around and walked towards you. Yeah, that's right. You see, I know him very well. And there's no way he'd just come here. I'm just afraid he's gonna make me do something terrible. I'm afraid to even guess what it is. Let's just say that in the old days, a word he didn't like could get him beaten up. And the result of that beating is sitting in a wheelchair in front of you right now. I understand you, Julia. You're afraid for yourself. But you can sleep well with this man. He did identify himself as Peter. He came here for a different reason. And that reason is not you. Certainly not to divorce you or any other issue. But what then? I saw him crying. And knowing Peter, he's never cried at his own mother's funeral. And here I'm at a loss to guess. You shouldn't. My dear Julia, this is not a secret confession. So I can tell you the reason why he came here, to soothe your soul and dispel all doubts. The priest stood up and went to the window. He must have been thinking about whether to tell or not, but he realized that the woman was right, and it was worth answering her question. After all, she was his wife and a woman who could really have been maimed by this man. I will tell you the reason why this man came here and decide for yourself if he is threatening you or not. Peter came and asked for my help in removing his sin. And I suppose that sin is you, Julia, what he did to you. Why would he say that? Peter thinks all his unborn children are dead because God has turned his back on him. Those words made Julia shudder. So he had other women, and they slept with him pregnant, but apparently couldn't give birth for some trivial reason. Peter was raising his hand at them. She commanded and hooked her fingers into the handrails of her wheelchair. Julia, I suppose. Do you know why his woman can't give birth? And it's not about God or a curse. Peter still raises his hand to them, like he did to me. When I fell and tragedy struck my legs. I was also pregnant, but the due date was so small I didn't realize it. Thank you for sharing your grief with me. I will definitely pray for your soul and hope that the Lord will give you the strength to stand on your feet and feel the joy of motherhood and find a good man. And you tell me, Julia, did you get married to Peter? No, he was against it, and I didn't really insist. And you know, we're both doctors, so to speak, people of scientific mind. And what advice did you give my husband, by the way? Let that be my secret. And how do you feel about going to church? But I hope you'll come to the temple. I'll try, Father. I really like it here. By the way, Andrew told me you know a doctor who got you back on your feet. Oh, by the way, I'm glad you reminded me. That's not true. A doctor like Emmanuel the Masseur. And he really helped me get back on my feet. I called him this morning, by the way, and he's ready to see me in 2 weeks. He's in advanced training right now, so you're going to have to wait a little while. I really didn't know all the specifics of your situation, because he spread his hands as if apologizing for not being able to fully help her. But thank you. And that's the end of my thanks to you, Father John. What matters to me is that you care about me. And there's the truth. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to go. You will. By the way, I'll give you some experience of my own. When it's warm, you take off your shoes in the morning and walk barefoot. Step on the wet grass dew. It has lasting power. Do you have a lush garden, by the way? As I recall, Anatole's mother used to grow various fragrant herbs, so he will be especially grateful to you. Thank you. Father John, I guess we'll be going. The girl looked intently at Andrew, begging him to get out of here as soon as possible. She didn't know why she wanted to leave so badly. Maybe from the overabundance of information, maybe for some other reason. But Andrew understood it and did not delay. He turned down 6 old friends and took her to her car. Julia, what's wrong? You left the priest's house so quickly. Did he hurt you? No, Andrew, it's okay. I got an answer to my question. And he didn't hurt me in any way. John, honestly, I don't know. But it's like someone was pushing me out of this house. Well, I won't bother you with my attention, and you'll forgive me. I have to run an errand. I'll take you home. I'll drop by tonight, if you don't mind. Sure, I don't mind. He looked in this and all the following evenings, trying to become not just the best friend and assistant, but something more in the life of the girl in whom he fell in love at first sight. And he really didn't care that she was disabled, moving around in a wheelchair. The man was ready to carry her in his arms, but only just. Andrew, you were right, Julia once said. And you and I are already talking. Our nurse Nadezhda asked me today, out of the blue, when are we getting married? Wow. But basically, what do you want? Tony's been telling me that I've been visiting too much. I mean, after all, you're a single girl, you live on your own. You should talk to him. You don't have to. I'm really uncomfortable. It's like I complained about you. That's not a man's habit. She smiled quietly. Really? Tony was right to a certain extent. But on the one hand, she was enjoying the visit. Andrew, by the way, before I forget, Father John got through to his friend, the Monopoly therapist, and booked you in for this Sunday. And by the way, we won't have to travel far. The specialist will come to his temple. Can you have him come down here and take a look at you? Maybe he can really get you back on your feet. Do you still believe in miracles? I'm not much of a doctor, but I wouldn't say no to help. I'd like to think you'll need me on my own, not in a wheelchair. Do you really think so? Andrew looked at her carefully. Yes, he smiled. But behind that smile there was sadness. And it was no coincidence that Andrew ran into Julia's husband again in the temple, who had come not by himself, but with his own position. Yes, a man knows how to choose his women. But I guess it's not fate. Andrew did not want to argue with him in the temple, but simply waited until he went outside, and approaching, quietly said, "We need to talk." Peter looked at the strange man in amazement, but did not argue, but simply asked his companion to wait for him in the car, and stepped aside. "Why did you come here to make fun of a single woman again? I know very well that you are her husband and what you did to her. Are you the reason she's in a wheelchair? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I didn't know anything about my ex-wife being here. I came to see John's father because my girlfriend can't carry my baby. Then first of all, why don't you give her a divorce? And secondly, why don't you support her? She refused my money. I'll file for divorce without her. And maybe Father John is right. We all pay for our sins. And what happened to Nina is my sin, which I'm now buying with my kids. Have you tried just talking to your wife and putting things right? You're probably right. I should come and talk to my wife and ask for her forgiveness, and maybe God will grant us both healing." He lowered his head and walked toward the car, but after a few steps he turned around and shouted toward Andrew, "I'll be there in 2 weeks on Sunday. Give this to Nina." And now the man stood in front of Nina, thinking whether or not to tell her about her husband's visit. But perhaps he should tell her, for his visit might be an unpleasant surprise. And he didn't want to get on the young woman's nerves. "There's something else I wanted to tell you. Really, don't get me wrong. What is it you have to say to me? You're not going to ask me to marry you." "Yes, I've seen your husband. I've been talking to him lately. He's coming next weekend with his woman." A shiver ran down the young woman's spine at those words. And for a second she felt as if an electric shock had slipped through her stiff legs. Had sensitivity returned to them? It couldn't be. It's the stuff of science fiction. Are you saying he's coming here? It's for me. What did he say to you? And how dare you talk to him about me at all? Julia, wait, he came to the temple with a girl, and she keeps losing the baby. He asked the priest for advice, repented that he had committed many sins, and this is his punishment. And wait, my dear man, he wants to come and ask your forgiveness for what he has done. He better give you a divorce. That's what I want with all my heart. He'll file for divorce himself. That's what Peter told me. That's what Peter told me. Why do I have to hear it from you? Julia turned to yelling in anger, though she didn't understand why she was yelling at Andrew. In fact, he had always helped her, and now she was choking with anger, but she couldn't help it. After all, her husband is coming here with his new fling, who will look at her and point his finger and say your wife is handicapped. You realize that he will come here with his girlfriend, his mistress, and that one will point her finger at me and say I am handicapped. What am I supposed to do? You don't. He's not coming here to introduce you and her. He's coming here to apologize to you, silly. Do you understand that? He's going to make up for his sins and give you a divorce to make up for his sins. Ha, that's Peter. Yeah, I wouldn't believe it for the life of me. Julia answered her, what if it's true and he gives you a divorce? Ask sincere forgiveness. It'll help, but I don't know what would make you happy. Andrew, I'll tell you more. I forgave him a long time ago, but now I don't want to see him, especially not with his new girlfriend. And you don't have to meet him. I'll be with you and I'll talk to you in person if you give me the go-ahead. If I have to, I'll tell him all the things you want to say and more. Julia herself did not realize what she wanted. For the truth was, she had forgiven her husband long ago. Let him go, threw him out of her life. And now she finds out like this that he has another woman. They want to have a child, but he didn't want to have children with her. Why is that? Julia, why are you angry? You've accomplished a lot. He will come to apologize on his own. He'll give you a divorce. I lost my legs because of him, of my unborn child. Do you understand that? And now I find out that he took a new wife, wants a child with her, and killed mine. Tears were streaming down her face. After all, she remained an invalid without a family and a child. And he will have everything that she did not have and still does not have. How could she live with such a thing? The woman simply did not understand it. She tried to dull her own pain by working, taking care of people, garden, animals, and this house, everything that surrounds her. I beg you, don't cry. Let's make up our minds. So talk to your husband, and I'll be right there with you, so to speak, as your support. Solve all your issues with him, so you can be calm. Do I have to? I just want to get my divorce and forget it all. Forget it like a bad dream. That's the way it's gonna be. But first you need to not only deal with your own husband, but you need to get checked out. How would you feel about having him check you out here at home, by the way? Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable here, and I think he's used to working from home. Good. Then I'll make arrangements with him and bring him here. And please don't cry, and everything will be fine. And Andrew put his hands on her lap, patted them lightly, and stood up and walked out of the house. Wow, this is news, Julia thought. And so everything started so well. Her husband's arrival, his repentance, the possibility of a divorce, and a box. Woo, what a day. It all came at once, but nothing, we'll figure it out. Carrot Cat poked and began to lose, and her chin encourages her aspirations. Say, Mistress, everything will work out. Don't upset her nor looked around and wiped her tears. What's there to say? It's not worth it for old offenses to spoil the life, which began to get better, and the rest. Julia, under what circumstances did you lose the ability to feel your legs? The question embarrassed her, but she was ready for it. Yeah, you know my husband hit me once. I fell, and I lost feeling in my legs. But there's no fracture, no nerve damage. Just a bad bruise, that's all. Doctors say it could be psychosis. But what if they tried? Nothing's working. Aha, but I've seen it happen more than once, particularly when working with soldiers coming out of the war. And by the way, there's a solution there. Aggressive massages and applications, mineral water baths. You know, excuse me, what's your name? Oleg, just Oleg. So Oleg, I'm a therapist myself. I've tried a lot of methods of means of techniques, but nothing at all. Well, you haven't had me until now. I'm not a magician, I'm just learning. But I'll try to get you back on your feet. So you're sure I can walk? Julia was lying on the improvised massage table, under which they took a wide bench, and smiled. There's no fracture. The nerves, as you say, are intact, so I don't see any serious reason why you can't walk or feel your legs. So the man pressed a point on her foot, but in such a way that Julia cried out. A current ran through her leg with terrible force, and she could have sworn 220 volts had been run through it. Oleg, did you just run electricity through my body? Electricity? No, I'm working on your active points, which temporarily fell asleep, became inactive, and were responsible for your legs. And what I'm seeing, I like it already. So I can give you back your legs, sensation, and mobility. Now just relax and enjoy. With every massage, with every touch of my hands, the feet didn't chew. They were responding to the touch, becoming docile. She could even move her fingers on the tables already, but she could not yet stand on them fully. Even so, the results pleased her immensely. Andrew, can you imagine? I can feel my legs. I'll be able to walk soon. And that's the best thing that's happened to me lately. But besides the fact that I moved here and met you honestly, you're glad you came here and met me. And that's a no-brainer, isn't it? You have become to me not just a friend and a helper, but something more than a friend. Julia, do you remember what I told you earlier? She looked at him carefully, trying to remember what he might have said to her. But so far it was not coming out well. I don't think you do. But I'll remind you, as soon as you're back on your feet, I'll ask you to marry. Wow, Andrew. I don't even know how I'm supposed to react to that. You don't. Just first stand on your feet, get on your feet without a stick, and then think whether to accept my proposal or not. The young woman smiled and lowered her head, trying to hide her joy in her smile and the bright sparks in her eyes. She had the pleasant words of a man she had been waiting for so long. Yes, I'll think about it then. In the meantime, you will help me to disperse, because how to go to the registry office, in a wedding dress and with a stick in his hand? It wouldn't be very pretty. No, it wouldn't. You'd have to match the wand to the dress. And I'll tell you, that could be a problem in particular. If the wand is masculine, not feminine, no stones or flowers, and all that. Wouldn't you agree, Andrew? Yeah, I'll have to figure out where to get you one or have it customized. Well, why don't you tell me how your results with the masseur went? It's great. My legs are regaining sensation. By the way, Andrew, I'm gonna need your help. I have a husband coming to my house this Sunday, and I really don't want to face him alone. Will you be there for me? Of course, I'll always be there for you. And that was the truth. Andrew was practically always there for her. In her darkest moments, Peter never showed up. He didn't want to look her in the eye and apologize, but he did file for divorce, which he notified her about in a little note. That's fine. I'm glad I didn't have to meet you in person, and I forgave you a long time ago. So you're done with your sins. I'll try to take care of mine. In a few weeks, she received a divorce certificate, and 6 months later, she was choosing a wedding dress in a bridal salon. And Tony Julia was there to help her. But why him? You're getting married again. Tony, but you're my friend, and he's my husband-to-be. I invited you to this wedding ahead of time so you wouldn't have to go through the motions. Don't let anything happen to you this time. Tony, you say that again, and I'll beat you up for sure. No, I know you're heavy-handed, so let's just try on a wedding dress and decide which one's best. Otherwise, you'll never pick one. And you're definitely getting married in a tracksuit. Oh yeah, it's so comfortable. And you don't have to worry about matching sneakers. I'll say, the wedding ceremony was modest and quiet with a minimum of guests, but still solemn and beautiful. And of course, they were married in the local church by Father John. And Tony, as an old friend witnessed, Ava's farmhouse to Not On Here are the keys to the house. I've already transferred the deeds to you, and may it be your new family nest. Yeah, thanks, man. Because this is where I met my happiness and got back on my feet in every sense of the word. You're my best friend and comrade. Without you, I would never have been happy. I would have sat in my apartment and spent my days and nights alone. And here. And there's a new happiness waiting for us. Yes, my darling. Yes, my dear man. I couldn't have gotten back on my feet without you, nor without the help of our spiritual advisor, Father John. So please, everyone to our celebration. We've booked a small restaurant, so it's gonna be family style. I don't want any flashy lights. Really, what's she need it for? She's got a family now, a husband, a house of her own. And maybe there'll be kids. Who knows, maybe these places will really help her to get pregnant again and find the joy of motherhood. And let everything be well with Peter. And she at that moment sincerely wished him well. From the bottom of her heart, even in spite of the grief he had brought her. Maybe she wouldn't have met her true happiness without it. Who knows?
Subscribe and click the bell.
Happy graduates came on the stage. They were given certificates. Girls were given flowers and boys were given small gifts. Dear graduates, Clara, smiling ingratiatingly, took under her arm a handsome 40-year-old man in a dark, expensive suit who entered the hall. Tonight would not be possible without our dear sponsor, Christian Wilson. Let's welcome him. Flowers and gifts for our graduates, provided by his firm. She was the first to applaud, led him to a place of honor among the guests, and sat down next to him. Pay attention to that girl over there. Nodded the director of the orphanage to the stage. Pretty, relaxed, the pride of our orphanage, a pleasant conversationalist can do a lot. Take a closer look. Not bad, quietly replied Wilson, appraising, looking at the graduate. But it's not the same. I'm tired of pretty faces in their 18, already gone through fire and water. I want a clean girl, not spoiled. She should be rustic, naive, but smart. I asked for a modest, simple girl, preferably pretty. Isabella Davis is invited to the stage. The hostess has announced. Who's that? Squinting, the man asked, scrutinizing the girl, who, smiling embarrassedly, approached the host. How come I've never seen her before? Well, Clara hesitated. She's so unassuming you wouldn't even look at her if it weren't for graduation. She's pretty sure, but she's very modest. She's a headache. Believe me, she can't do anything. She's hardly interesting to you as a woman. Clara got nervous. Trouble is, I thought she wouldn't notice Isabella. I had dressed her in a low-colored outfit, but the devil had noticed. The headmistress was upset because of the pupil. She loved her maternally and did not want the fate that was prepared by the dear guest. I'll decide who I'm interested in and who I'm not. Wilson cut her off abruptly. Just such a type, the limit of my dreams. Did you hide her on purpose? He looked suspiciously at the director. Don't disappoint me. You know I don't tolerate games behind my back. I thought that little gray mouse couldn't be the centerpiece of your house. How can she be dignified at social gatherings? She'll embarrass you. Believe me, she'll bring you grief. Meanwhile, the festivities are over. Christian, Clara have secluded themselves in the principal's office. I'm taking Isabella away from you. In an expensive leather armchair, the man said. I liked her right away. Listen. Clara frantically searched for a reason to refuse. She's just a girl, naive, unintelligent, but what if I sent Lisa with you? She's a quick-witted, skillful girl. I think she's closer to you than Isabella. I'm afraid she'll disappoint you. Clara was not in vain nervous. Her guest was a lover of young girls who had just finished school. The woman realized that, despite the unruly, cocky character, Isabella will not be able to fight back. Don't be so shaky. Christian grinned. Your son is safe as long as you honor our arrangements. Yes, I'll do as you say. I'm glad we understand each other. The man smiled sweetly and threw some bills on the table. This is for you to ease your conscience. I didn't realize you were so sentimental. If you care so much about this Isabella, it means I didn't make the wrong choice. He left, and Clara sat down at the table, dropped her head on her hands, and fell silent. What a scoundrel! What a lecher! She muttered to herself. I am good. I could not defend the girl. My heart is not in place. I am so worried about Isabella. But what can I do? 2 dear people are at stake, and yet my son's freedom is more precious. The way things are, I can't let my child go to prison. And Isabella, God forgive me, I'm a sinner. In the morning, Clara went to the dining room where the inmates were having breakfast. Isabella, come here, please. Yes, Clara. Trustingly, looking into the eyes of the director, the girl replied. The woman looked away, uncomfortable with the upcoming conversation, but Wilson cornered her. And what are those people in strict suits doing here? Who are they waiting for? Isabella asked, entering the principal's office. "Isabella." The woman paused. There was a struggle going on inside her, but she knew that the mother would win and the principal would fulfill the wish of the man who sponsored all the big events at the orphanage. "I'm very happy that you graduated from high school. You are the pride of this year's graduating class. I know you have big plans for your future, but you will have to put them on hold." "Why?" The girl looked at the principal, puzzled. "Wilson is waiting for you at his house." "Wilson? Our guest from yesterday?" Clara nodded. She was visibly nervous. "Why does he need me? I don't understand." "What don't you understand?" The headmaster suddenly shouted in a trembling voice. "Didn't you hear anything about him from our girls' graduates? He liked you." "I've heard something in passing." Isabella slowly began to realize what had been said. "But I don't like him. I don't want to go out with him. One of the girls wanted to go to his house. I don't remember. Let them go in my place. I don't want to be his concubine." "You can't refuse," tiredly said Clara. "He won't give up. If anything, he's made up his mind. I'm not going to go to him. You have no right to force me." The girl rushed to the door, swung it open. The exit was blocked by stout young men. They stared silently at Isabella, ready to twist her at any moment if necessary. She slammed the door shut and turned to the principal. "How can you do this to us? I mean, he's old. Have you sold out for money? You don't understand anything." Clara, nervously biting her lips, wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep warm. "He's a scary man and I'm on the hook for him. A few years ago, he saved my son, got him out of jail, my boy's freedom. That's the trump card Wilson is using, and I'm powerless. I can't fight back. He's blackmailing me. One day you'll be a mother, and you'll realize you'd sell yourself to the bald man for your child to be happy. So there's no chance of me getting out of here. Those are his guards at the door. I wanted to spare you from that fate, but he wanted someone just like you. He said he wanted a naive, modest girl, and God gave you beauty and intelligence to ruin. How many girls did he have in his collection? You're the fourth. And where did they go? Do you know what happened to them after they were in the hands of this Wilson?" I don't know anything about their fate." Clara looked pityingly at Isabella. "I haven't tried to find out. So you send 18-year-old girls to a grown man and just forget about their fate. How's that? Doesn't it make you feel bad?" I'm sorry. Tears came to the woman's eyes. They agreed at once. No one resisted. She grasped Isabella's hand and spoke eagerly. If I could stop him, but my son's freedom is in his hands. You will understand me when you are a mother yourself. You'd better accept it. He won't back down. He's a scary man. He'll stop at nothing. Even if I tried to report him to the police, he'd get away with it. It's all been bought." Isabella stood for a moment, looking into the headmaster's eyes. In them, except fear and entreaty, she read nothing else, then pulled her hand out of the hands of Claire, abruptly opened the door and said loudly, "Well, if there's no escaping fate, let's take it as it comes. Let's go, boys." Isabella was returning from school, not far from the house, noticed her grandmother, caught up with her mother, who leaned with her back against the fence, sat looking at the surrounding with meaningless eyes. The girl slowed her step and stopped. Well, stood up like a stumbling block. Vanessa shouted, "Help your mother to the bed. I can't do it alone. You see, she's drunk again." "Lord, when will it all end? Make sense of my foolish daughter. When will you get drunk on this vodka?" Isabella obediently came and took her mother under her arm, but she couldn't hold her and dropped her on the ground. "Oh, you bastard!" Grandmother hit her, dry fist in the shoulder. Quite sensitively, the girl wrinkled from the pain. "You can't hold your mother. Hold her tight." The two of them dragged the mother to the bed. "You didn't watch her again." The old woman scolded her granddaughter. "I told you not to let her out of the house." "I was at school. How could I watch her?" Justified the girl. "We left the house together in the morning. She said she went to work." "What kind of job?" "She was fired last week. What am I going to do with them?" The old woman cried. "Both of them and their husbands drink like crazy, and you can't help them." "Did you go for bread?" "No, I didn't have time. I'll be right back." Isabella ran out of the house, afraid she'd get another beating from her grandmother. "Isabella," a neighbor met her. "There's your father lying by the store. You should pick him up." The girl hurried to the store. Her father was lying on the side, sleeping soundly. "Daddy." Isabella shook him by the shoulder. "You won't wake him up." Some man said confidently, "And how can I bring him home?" The girl was confused. "Don't be sad, we'll help you." The man bent down, pulled her father by the arm and put him on the ground, then picked him up, threw him on his shoulder and dragged him. Isabella ran after him. "Receive." Entering the house and breathing heavily, the stranger spoke. He carefully lowered his heavy burden onto the couch, straightened up, took a breath, and left. "Where did you find him?" Vanessa asked, making her father comfortable on the couch. "Outside the store, he was asleep. The man volunteered to help. I didn't even ask." The world is not without kind people. "Did you buy bread?" The old woman caught on. "No, I had to come back because of my father." "You wretch!" The grandmother swung and pulled on her granddaughter's back with the towel she held in her hands. Isabella quickly rushed into the store. "What are you going to kill Isabella for?" A neighbor showed up on the doorstep. "You're out of control." Granny grumbled. "No wonder. Parents who do not dry out for a day. The child is not needed at all." Somehow she's still studying well. Another girl in her place would have abandoned everything long ago. "Yes, it's a pity about the girl," the neighbor lamented. "You should caress her. The girl lacks love and affection. One day she won't be able to stand it and will do something. That's why we have to keep a tight grip on her, so that she grows up strictly, or else she'll go down a crooked path like her parents. Wash the floors." She told her granddaughter when she returned from the store. "You've trampled here. I have no strength left." "Okay, Grandma." The girl obediently took a bucket and a rag. "You're driving the girl crazy." The neighbor reproached the grandmother. "She doesn't hear a kind word from you. Is it her fault that both parents have gone crazy?" "None of your business." The old woman replied glumly. "I can't cope alone, and parents are of little use. You should take pity on her." The friend lamented. "But what is the use of that pity? Then she will thank me for teaching her everything." The mother should be an example, but not fate. Both of them should be deprived of parental rights. "I don't think so. It's better to live at home with them than in an orphanage." The neighbor shook her head disapprovingly and went away. "Grandma, can Cindy come to my birthday party?" Isabella asked one day. She was going to be 13 in 2 days. "Think about it. Where are you going to invite guests?" Grandma frowned. "Parents won't let them stay. They just want an excuse to get drunk. Then you'll be embarrassed. We'll lock ourselves in my room. No one will hear us." "Please, Grandma." "All right," Vanessa muttered. "Just don't tell your parents. Maybe you'll get away with it. I'll make you something tasty." The grandmother hoped in vain that the mother would not remember about her daughter. She came in the evening with a bottle of wine. "Set the table." She ordered her mother, shaking her hand, pouring vodka into a glass. Would you not spoil the party, Isabella? Asked the older woman. She has a guest. I have the right to drink to my daughter's health, and you are not my order. I gave birth to her. That's a good reason to have another drink. I drink with my own money. I'm not borrowing it from you. Can I have an appetizer? You'd better replace the electric stove. The wire's getting hot. It's not a bad thing. You're always dissatisfied with something. Angrily said the woman. You need, you buy, but I have no money. When I get a job, then everything will be, but until then, do not bother me. You and your husband will always have money for vodka. Vanessa grumbled, serving a simple appetizer. Isabella and her friend sat in the room for a while, watched cartoons, played, and went home. The girl was glad that her mother did not make a scandal like last year when Isabella invited her friends, and in no way expected that her mother would come home drunk from work and roughly disperse the whole company. The girl at that moment was ready to fall to the ground with shame. In the morning, she kissed her grandmother and ran off to school. Do not delay. I'm boiling borscht with your favorite garlic buns. The old woman shouted after her. Okay, Grandma. The day was going great. Isabella was in a hurry to get home. She was walking, facing the spring sunshine, and humming a cheerful song to herself. Wow! Approaching the house, suddenly noticed Isabella. An uneasiness stirred in her soul. Was there a fire? There were people in the street, cars, ambulances, firemen. Do you know who has a fire? She asked a woman who was trying to see what was going on up ahead. Isabella. The neighbor looked at her fearfully. Your house is on fire. How? The girl was dumbfounded and rushed through the crowd. Where? Someone called her and tried to hold her back. Don't go to the ashes, stop. Let me go, my mom's there. They grabbed her, held her down. She started to break free. Grandma, Daddy, let me go. Why are you standing there? We have to save her. She screamed, trying to break free from the tight embrace. I have to go to them. Isabella, they're dead. A man's strong arms shook her. You can't go in there, do you hear me? They're gone. Yes, they are. Why are you standing there? Why aren't you helping? They can't be dead. Don't you understand? They're out there. I'll find them. Let me go, please. The girl suddenly weakened, slipped out of my arms, sat down on the grass and wept. She raised her head to the sky. Mommy. The soul-crushing scream rose above the flames and vanished into the sky. Everyone standing around her was heartbroken by the cry. Women wiped their tears with handkerchiefs, men gritted their teeth, and looked sympathetically at the little girl's grief. People were quietly talking among themselves, watching the fire being doused. Suddenly it flared up, and I looked, and it was going up in flames. No one escaped. The firemen came quickly, but there was nothing they could do. They flooded to keep the flames from spreading to other buildings. Do we know what caused it? The cops said it was faulty wiring. Vanessa complained that the electric stove was sparking, but who'd listen to her? All dead. Good thing the girl was at school, or she would have been too. Why did the ambulance come? They thought they could save someone, but there. What a grief! I feel sorry for Isabella. Now she'll go to an orphanage. The girl sat in the grass and stared blankly at the house, tears running down her cheeks. She could not understand that she was left alone, without a home, without relatives. Come on, sweetheart. Someone lifted her up. There's no reason for you to sit here. Come and stay with us until the child welfare authorities get here. You must be hungry. Grandma promised me borscht. Swallowing tears, quietly said the girl. Poor you, poor orphan, how unlucky you are. The neighbor shook her head. Isabella followed her obediently. Her strength to cry was gone, and there was a persistent smell of burning in her nose. She collapsed on the offered sofa, curled up in a ball under the blanket, and cried quietly. No, I don't believe it. It can't be. Mom, Dad, and the always nagging Grandma. There is no one. How can I go on living? You cry, sweetheart. An old woman stroked her head. You'll feel better. God willing, everything in life will get better. She sighed heavily. The girls were fidgeting in front of the mirror, trying on dresses for the graduation ceremony. The exams were finally behind them. Isabella looked dreamily at her reflection. I thought they would never end. Now we are free. You see, no tutors, no scheduled breakfasts, no getting up, no going to bed, but life will begin. Isabella, you're so beautiful. The girlfriend did not take her admiring eyes off the girl. You'd say so too. Isabella looked at herself in the mirror. I can't believe we've known each other for only 5 years. Yes, she laughed. It seems like a lifetime. She ran over to Kelly and hugged her tightly. You know, as strange as it sounds, I'm glad you ended up in our orphanage. I was always jealous. You're lucky to remember your parents. Yeah, lucky. I just remember them, always drunk. I never even knew mine. Do you remember when we were friends? Of course I remember. And Isabella got sad. The ritual, the new girl's registration. Everyone was laughing, and I was on the floor with a broken nose. You were the only one who stood up for me. From that day on, no one ever tried to mess with you again. Of course, because you fought like a tiger. Isabella laughed. I'm sorry we have to break up. I'll miss you. But we'll correspond. We'll return phone calls. I'll definitely come visit as soon as I get settled, and you come too. You finally decided to go to modeling school. Haven't you changed your mind? Well, can you imagine what awaits you there? Yes, the girl dreamily spun around the room. It's not for nothing that I earned my portfolio. Tried to participate in all the events. I hope it'll help me get through the competition. Yeah, with your looks, you could be an actress, not just a model. Juliet would be amazing in your performance. In our amateur talent show, you're unrivaled. Don't exaggerate. Isabella was embarrassed by the flattery. We have a lot of talented kids here. Thanks to her, my literacy is invisible. She made me participate in all Olympiads and events. Lucky you, Isabella. You know what you want to get out of life? Well, Isabella hugged her friend. Why are you so sad? We'll be fine, and you'll find yourself. Shall we go to the auditorium? They're giving out diplomas now. They say Wilson has prepared such presents for us. I can't wait to see them. The girls went to the auditorium that were already in full swing handing out certificates. Look, whispered in my friend's ear. Wilson here at the age, and yet nothing like that. Attractive and in good shape, his peers have long since grown their bellies, and this one is watching himself, and still that walker, not a single beautiful woman will not miss. The girl laughed, and still not married. I'd like to see the one he will marry. Who is she, anyway? Isabella asked, looking at the tall, broad-shouldered man with the piercing look in his blue eyes. You're crazy. The girl was surprised. This is the local patron of the arts. Everything we have in the orphanage is his merit. He gave us a computer class last year. Look at him. He's very handsome. Many of our girls have a crush on him. Uh-huh, agreed Isabella. But it's old. What do they see in it? You don't know anything about men. At this age, they are at their best. And what does it matter how old he is? Hotly whispered in her ear friend. If he has money, chickens do not peck. Anybody with him, like behind a stone back, a dream, not a man. How do you know? Isabella looked at her friend suspiciously. We're waiting for Isabella Davis. The girlfriend suddenly heard. Go. Isabella pushed Isabella, the girl. It's your turn. Imagine you're on the runway. Show everyone what the first beauty of our orphanage should look like. Let them gasp at your attractiveness. The girl walked to the stage. Returning to her seat, she felt the stares on her. Wilson was looking at Isabella in a way that made her uncomfortable. Why is he looking at me so strangely? She thought, and shivered under the predatory gaze of his blue eyes. It's like he's undressing me. I wouldn't want to be alone with him. Huh? She restrained herself. I thought, why would he want me? But Isabella was not mistaken. Christian was staring at her with a greedy gaze. I must have her. The man thought, gazing at the girl. Very nice. He smiled, satisfied, anticipating a night in the arms of the young beauty. Isabella felt uncomfortable, in the company of 3 scowling, taciturn men. Where are we going? The girl could not bear the long silence, trying not to show how frightened she was. Christian's country house. The man was silent. If you behave well, the owner will not offend. He likes obedient young ladies. The men laughed. It depends on what he expects from me. The girl thought to herself. One thing is clear, there's no point in begging him to let me go, and I'm not going to snot. Rose-colored glasses also long ago removed. I understand, not tea drinking invited. The only thing left is to accept the situation as it is, and then think how to get out of it. It's okay, I'll be able to stand up for myself. If you cannot escape from fate, you must take a chance, try to get out of poverty, so that no Wilson in the future no longer dare to drool at the sight of me and offer all sorts of abominations. I'm strong, I can handle this old man who likes young girls. I'll make him dance to my tune. I won't give up so easily. He doesn't expect to get me on a silver platter. Life in an orphanage had taught me a thing or two. And yet Isabella was scared, her heart clenched uneasily from the unknown. Here we are. The driver announced, stopping the car in the yard of a huge country house. Come. The guard opened the door in front of her. Christian is waiting. If you'll be good, you'll even like to be his guest. The man laughed, casting an expressive glance at her gorgeous body. Isabella entered the Wilson house and looked around in a hostess-like manner. Quite an environment, she thought. Plenty of room to spread out. Her courage was ostentatious. She tried not to think about what awaited her in the house. Isabella! Christian, opening his arms, went to meet his guest. I'm glad you agreed to accept my invitation. I'm honored. You may not believe me, but when I saw you on stage, I realized that this is the woman I have dreamed of all my life. You captured my heart from the very first minute. I promise you won't regret coming here. As I approached her, I grabbed her in his arms and began to cover her with passionate kisses. Christian. Isabella let him kiss her, and then slipped out of his embrace. Is that any way to welcome a guest? Especially a woman. She smiled slyly, though her insides trembled with fear and loathing. The man stared at her, puzzled by the question. What do you mean? Where are the flowers, the champagne? I was imagining a romantic candle at dinner, and you immediately kiss. I didn't expect to take a complete stranger without foreplay. I'm told you're a skillful lover. We should get to know each other a little first, and save the best for later. I agree, the bouquet and confection period in our case is a little irrelevant, but still I wanted to prepare for the main event of the night. Yes, he mumbled something under his breath. I wasn't thinking. It's a very important day. I'm entering adulthood. You're my first man, and I'd like it to be beautiful. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing? Eh? She playfully poked him in his slightly bulging belly with her finger. Did you want to save money on me? Or did you want to get me in bed right away? Is that really all you can offer me on a first date? She was on the edge of her seat, fear of the unknown forcing her to act brazenly. Isabella grabbed his tie, pulled him toward her. She didn't think that such an experienced lover would decide to dispense with the love game. The girl wrapped the tie around her fist. Christian blushed. It became hard for him to breathe. You witch, barely catching his breath? The man wheezed. This has never happened to me before. I like you, and I want you now. He suddenly grasped her slender wrists and yanked her sharply toward him. He forcefully put her on his lap and tried to kiss her, one hand holding her down, the other hand running under her blouse and squeezing her breasts. How hot you are, a delicate, innocent flower. Let's go to the bedroom. I am overwhelmed with desire to possess you. Ah, you old lecher. Isabella shrieked and slapped him hard. What are you doing, bitch? Christian howled and grabbed his cheek. Taking advantage of the confusion, the girl jumped to her feet and ran a safe distance away from the excited man. She stopped by the hotly burning fireplace and grabbed a poker. Don't come near me. I'll defend myself. Don't expect to get away with this. Wilson hissed, rubbing his cheek, hot with fire. You seem to have forgotten where you are and why you're here. Don't make me angry. I can take you by force right now. Don't play with me or you'll regret it. I don't want to. She shouted, looking at him with a burning, feverish gleam in her eyes. How do you want it, my dear? He smirked. Rose petals in bed? Light music? Soft whispers and poetry reading until morning? I'm past that age. I prefer to spend my time making love. That goes without saying, but not now. The girl sat in the chair across from Christian. I propose a wager. A wager? Christian's eyes widened. Do you realize who you're offering this to? Isabella remembered a conversation with a friend who said that Wilson was a gambler. Yes, the girl declared defiantly. You're a gambler, but if you sleep with me, what's the interest? In a week at the most, you'll be satiated and kicked out of the house. Thank you if you'll pay for the first night in bed with a virgin. Naturally, I'll thank you. Insert man. No woman would accuse me of being stingy. Money, jewelry, I am a generous lover. That's understandable, but I suggest you entertain yourself in another way. Admit it. Do all your days resemble one another? Perhaps. Christian is wary. You boast that women never complain about you. I've heard that many try to get your attention and swear eternal love just for the money. You buy women, change them like gloves, and not one has ever said she loved you out of her heart and not for wealth. Yes, everyone's happy to be in your bed. I don't see where you're going with this, do you? Wilson frowned. He was beginning to be annoyed by this willful girl. But I'm not one of them, and you're not my type. That's not the kind of man I've seen around me. Isabella paused meaningfully. But if you manage to make me love you, I will become yours without any additional conditions. Do what you want with me then, and when I get bored, you can throw me out on the street. And the second condition? But if you yourself fell in love with me to unconsciousness, then I will still become yours, but only through the registration of marriage. You will make me your lawful wife, with all the consequences. Wilson laughed out loud. Do you know that I never lose? We'll see about that. The girl grinned. Don't hope that the problem is so easy to solve. But I still don't understand. What is the bet? You'll be mine either way. He accepted her game, she hooked him, and the excitement of the gambler flared up in him. He liked the girl more and more. That's true, but everything must be consensual, without coercion. Those are the only terms we'll agree to with you. Do you agree? To hell with you. Wilson waved his hand. But now I want to make love to you. I've already put this moment off for too long. I didn't bring you here for a heart-to-heart. He made an attempt to get closer to her. No. Isabella gestured for him to stop. Nothing can happen between us now. You yourself agreed to my proposal. For the rest of the bet, no bed. We agreed to make love consensually. Are you ready to sign off on your own loss? That doesn't sound like you. So now we're going to separate rooms and that's it? Of course. Isabella explained impatiently, like an unreasonable child. That's the point of our pact, to fall in love for real. And then either you get me or I get you. And at the end of the bet, we'll have a long married life. You won't lose anything at all. You'll only get me a little later. But you'll taste the victory when it's over. An unforgettable night in the arms of a virgin. What, Mr. Wilson, is it weak? Squinting, the girl asked. Not a bit. The man replied defiantly. How long do you suggest? 3 months. How? Enough time and your experience of seduction, young fools, to win my heart? Or have you already lost your youthful vigor? That you can't do anything but skim off the cream by sleeping with an innocent girl. And I thought I was an alpha male, a heroic lover. But in reality, alas, a banal suitor, unable to give pleasure to a woman. You know how it hit a nerve. The man was sure of his victory. Wait, you'll still be at my feet, lying at my feet, begging for love and tenderness. He thought, you'll be begging me not to leave you. Well, the offer is tempting. Christian said slowly, my life has lacked spice. The reward for the tedious 3-month wait will be an unforgettable night with you. Without doubting my success, the more I really won't lose anything. Just 3 months and you're mine. So, do we have a deal? Isabella held out her hand to the man. Deal. He shook it with his strong hand. And you yourself will be able to endure 3 months? The girl was silent. You won't. Isabella grinned to herself. I'll never love you, and I'll never be your lover. I'm not likely to win over a man so adept at lovemaking. I just need to buy time, and then I'll decide what to do next. Little fool, you don't know I've never lost a game in my life. Wilson thought, looking at the girl with eyes darkened with passion. With what pleasure he would now undress her and show her what he could do. But he decided to see what would come of the bet. And you agreed to her terms? Laughed at him Buddy when Christian, over a shot of cognac, a few days later told him about the pair. Yes, I agreed to endure these months. It's worth it. You don't realize how seductive she is, and you hope she'll fall in love with you. I do. Arrogant, Wilson declared. You know I'm an expert in female psychology. In a month at the most, she will surrender to the mercy of the winner, and I will triumph, having gained power over this little girl who thinks herself a seductress of men's hearts. In fact, I'll be her first man. Christian? His friend looked at him suspiciously. Have you fallen in love with your prisoner? Even if I do, the man said evasively, the reward will not be long in coming. She's still mine. And you're ready to take her to register the marriage? That would be fun. Wilson laughed, but I haven't decided whether I'm ready to give up my freedom for another pretty face. Although I must say she is clever. Isabella, however, has hit a nerve, Christian. Hoping to knock her down with the romance of a summer evening, he decided to organize a fancy dinner on his yacht. She wouldn't be able to resist. He told the captain, no matter how hard she tries to play hard to get, She will not be able to remain indifferent to a ride on a luxury boat. I'm sure. The captain smiled understandingly. She will reciprocate. No frills, he ordered the chef. A girl from the orphanage will feel uncomfortable. Champagne, appetizers, fruit, dessert. I got it, Christian. Anything else? Captain, have the deck decorated with balloons and musicians. I want some light music. We'll walk along the coast. The girl will love it. I got it. Captain trumped. Should we count on a night? No. For 3 to 4 hours, I think for the first time is enough. She will dance with joy. The man grinned. What has she seen in her orphanage? Let her see how rich people live. I hope she'll appreciate my impulse. No one has ever been indifferent to an evening spent on a yacht. I think she'll be no exception. The night before the party, Wilson checked everything, made sure his orders were followed exactly. Isabella, I want to invite you to dinner. The man expected that the girl would be interested in his proposal, but she looked at him indifferently and said, But I do not understand you. Rich, ready to spend money left and right. Don't know where to put it? Give it to charity. Why go out when I've made a nice dinner at home? I'm a pretty good cook, don't you think? It's not just any dinner. Barely containing his irritation, Christian said, I'm taking you for a walk along the river. Yes. Isabella couldn't hide her interest. But then that changes everything. She jumped to her feet. I'm ready. You're going to go in that. The man was surprised, looking at her worn jeans and stretched t-shirt. Why, it's not like we're going to a restaurant. Pretending to be a fool, the girl replied, and then she laughed. Relax, Christian. Give me half an hour and I'll clean myself up. You didn't take my words seriously, did you? We were not taught to behave like this in society, but I know the elementary rules of etiquette. When Isabella emerged from the room, Wilson gasped. Before him stood a gorgeous woman in a dark dress, just above the knees. Her breasts were adorned with a simple gold chain and pendant, and her thick mane of dark brown hair fell loosely around her shoulders. Light makeup made expressive, lively, green eyes. Slender legs in low-heeled shoes were striking. Christian swallowed nervously, imagining how he would caress those beautiful legs. I'm shocked. It was all he could say, wondering what kind of underwear she was wearing now. Are we going? Looking at him haughtily, the girl asked. Yes, please. The man ushered her into the car. The ship swayed impatiently on the waves. Waiting for the guests, the captain met them on deck, helped them to board gallantly, bowed his head at the sight of the girl. Good evening, he greeted. Glad to see you aboard the Aurora. Isabella, would you care for a glass of champagne? Wilson asked, waving his hand to the waiter. It will add a little romantic flavor to our evening, and also... He waved again. I love music. Do you mind? In the dim light of the lanterns, 3 musicians appeared, playing a quiet, slow song. Do you like it? The man asked his guest, taking a sip of his glass. He took out a gold bracelet from his pocket and put it on Isabella's thin wrist. I bought it for you. It's beautiful. The girl replied discreetly. Is this how you won the hearts of your mistresses? Were they ready to jump into bed with you? She glanced indifferently at her vis-a-vis. I wonder how much money you intend to spend on my seduction. I expected something more extraordinary. You obviously have problems with imagination. Did you really expect me to fall for this cheap romantic nonsense? No, I'm glad you're paying attention, but I was expecting something a little more sophisticated. I hope. She shivered, showing she was cold. We won't have to spend the night. You. Boiling, Christian. Ungrateful little brat. What have you seen in your life? Dinner aboard a yacht. with a rich man, the limit of your dreams. I can't believe you don't like it here." "Why not?" Isabella said calmly. "I like it, but I dreamed of it when I was 14. Now I've wised up. It's all contrived, momentary. In half an hour we will finish champagne, eat dessert, and then you will try to seduce me, heated by alcohol. How vulgar, and not at all reciprocated. What do you want?" Barely containing the anger ready to burst out. Wilson asked, "I don't know." Isabella shrugged. "Before you hit me in the heart, I want my soul to turn around and soar. For now," she stood up resolutely from the table, "I want to go ashore. So everything I've arranged here," he gestured for the musicians to leave. "You don't like it?" "I didn't say I didn't like it." The girl answered evasively. "I said it was too corny to win a woman's heart." "All right, then, let's go home." They said goodbye to the captain, who gave them a long and surprised look. At home, they went to their rooms. "What can I seduce you with?" Christian was racking his brain. "What?" A friend of his told him about his unsuccessful attempt to win a girl's heart. "You couldn't handle a hottie? You're getting old, brother. You can't use your old tricks, can you? I should have gotten involved with her." Christian cursed in his heart. "I don't know what she wants. Think of something unusual, by the way. I give you an idea. Take her abroad. She probably has not been there. The youth of today, they can't wait to go there. For a poor orphan, it's enough to impress her for a year." "Why?" "The man's on fire." "It's not a bad idea. If I get what I want, I'll thank you." "You don't have to thank me. I was already wondering how it would end. It's been 2 weeks since Christian prepared the trip abroad." "Isabella." Smiling enigmatically, he announced, "Tomorrow you and I are going on a trip. I hope we won't have to take a boat this time. I can't reveal all the details to you yet. Trust me. Wear loose clothes so you'll be comfortable. I have one condition." "What's that?" The girl looked at him suspiciously. "I'll blindfold you. Until a certain point, you must not know where we are going." "Agreed?" "Do you have to be blindfolded?" "Yes, otherwise it won't be a surprise." Isabella was blindfolded and brought to the airport. Christian helped her aboard a private plane, and only there was allowed to remove the blindfold. "An airplane?" the girl asked excitedly, looking out the porthole. "All my life I dreamed of flying in an airplane at least once, so I managed to impress you." "Let's put it this way," Isabella said discreetly. "I like the fact that we're going somewhere. I'm sorry," a few hours later, Wilson informed. "I have to blindfold you again." Isabella was elated in her heart. She had dreamed of traveling for so long. They crossed the helicopter. "I want to see where we are." Isabella fidgeted impatiently in the seat. "Be patient." The man stopped her. "Soon you'll see everything." When the engine died down, Wilson untied the blindfold. "Where are we?" Isabella exhaled in disbelief. "On the roof?" "We're on a rooftop in Paris, and there's dinner waiting for us." He held out his hand to her and led the way. The girl's breath was taken away by the beauty. The city was visible as in the palm of her hand. The warm wind was developing her dark hair. It was a little scary, but Isabella didn't give any sign. "Callie will not believe that I saw the Eiffel Tower with my own eyes," the girl thought. Her heart fluttered with joy, but she didn't want to admit that she was overwhelmed by the incredible adventure. Christian seated her at a table. A waiter appeared from somewhere with a bottle of wine. Another brought hot food. The waitstaff tried to be discreet. "Do you like it?" The man asked, seeing how her green eyes lit up. "I can't say I wasn't moved. It's a little trip," Isabella said. "But I don't understand. Why spend money on meaningless things? I wanted to do something nice for myself. To throw so much money away for an hour's dinner? That's just stupid. Are you trying to make me angry on purpose? The man spoke softly in a voice that didn't bode well. Yes, anyone in your place would kiss my feet after such a trip and pray to God for me. I don't see a queue of people falling at your feet in the house. The girl sneered. Don't forget yourself. He flared up. I can take you back to where I got you. I'm sick of your antics. So you're admitting defeat? What are you trying to do? I'm waiting for you to admit you lost my bet. Where's that famous seduction technique you've been bragging about on every corner? All you know how to do is throw money around. Of course, what better way to impress a silly orphan than with crisp bills? That's all you're capable of. It doesn't bother me. But that's it. I'm sick of you. Christian turned white with anger. We're going back immediately. I didn't know you were so nervous. Looking regretfully at Paris lying at her feet, the girl said, If we are here, why not enjoy the view of the City of Lovers? If I am not mistaken, it is also called the City of Lights. The walk along the rooftops was over. The man's up. You ruined it. A few hours later, they were home. You won the bet. The man announced, I'm trying to shake you up, and you're like an impregnable fortress under siege. Everything's wrong with you. Everything's wrong with you. You don't like jewelry. You don't like flowers because you have to throw them away. I don't understand what you want. Any woman in your place would have been happy to share my bed, but you persist in pretending indifference. I don't want to continue this game. I'm sick of it, and I don't want to see you either. So pack your things and get out of my house. Everything I gave you, keep it, and get the hell out of here. I want to forget you like a bad dream. Don't you ever set eyes on me again. If you say so. The girl shrugged her shoulders. Don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone that you can't impress a modern woman with anything. If you say another word, clenched his fists, gritted through his teeth Wilson. I will not vouch for myself. Will you allow yourself to hit a woman? She made big eyes, and her heart sank into her heels at the sight of the enraged man. Isabella did not try her luck, silently packed up and left. Well, what have you achieved? She pondered, walking through the streets of the city. Left at a broken trough, what to do now? In the most difficult moments, she dialed a familiar number. Hello, girlfriend. Isabella. She heard a cheerful exclamation on the other end of the line. I was so afraid for you. I thought you weren't answering your cell phone. What if something terrible happened? I've heard such horror stories about your Wilson. He's not mine. Isabella cut it off. Don't listen to the gossips. Tell me, how are you doing? I'm wandering around town, wondering what I'm gonna do. Christian kicked me out the door. That's news. Kelly was amazed. What are you thinking about? Coming to the orphanage? Or do you want to go back to him? You know, I think he fell in love with me like a boy. I got what I wanted. I made him lose his head. That's why he's mad. What about you? What about me? I don't even like him. Then what are you thinking about? Come back. You'll be welcome here. What am I going to do there? It's too late to go to college. I can't find a place to live right away. Wilson left me some money, of course, but how much is enough? And anyway, why am I showing off? Suddenly, she said, marriage to such a man would open many doors. A modeling agency certainly wouldn't be an obstacle. Isabella, are you crazy? You don't love him. Can you imagine what it's like to live with someone you don't love? So what? I don't care if he loves me. I'm looking forward to marriage with him. I don't recognize you, friend. The girl said sadly. You've never been calculating. I didn't expect to be ambitious myself, but with his help I was able to realize all the plans I had made in the orphanage. Aren't you happy for me? His money will open any door. Isn't that what we dreamed of? Are you really willing to live with a man you don't love? His love is enough for the two of us." Isabella shrugged. "I've been tormented by doubts, and now that I've talked to you, I'm sure I must go back to him." "Isabella, come to your senses," wailed her friend. "I know what I'm doing. I'm thinking more rationally now than ever. Bye. Thanks for listening." Isabella hurried home. She hesitantly opened the door, afraid of being ostracized, and reappeared. Wilson was sitting at the table. A bottle of whiskey stood beside her, almost half empty. "And that's you?" The man looked at her with a cloudy stare. "Why did you come here? To make fun of me?" "Yes, you failed. Who doesn't? I came to tell you that I've agreed to marry you." An unexpected decision. He grinned wryly. "I lost, didn't I?" "If you remember, there was a second part to the bet. If you fall in love with me, we go to register the marriage. You do love me, don't you?" "What does that change?" "It changes everything. I agree to be your wife. You haven't changed your mind about marrying me, have you?" "Change your mind?" Christian sobered up immediately. "Yes, I've been dreaming of calling you my wife for months." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a gold ring with a large diamond. "You see, I even bought a ring for my future wife. I didn't think it would come in handy so soon." He stood up, walked over to Isabella, took her hand, and put the expensive ring on her ring finger. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Isabella answered decisively, though it felt as if she had jumped into a whirlpool. "Isabella, hello!" Hear the woman in the phone, a familiar voice of a friend. "Hello!" Sobbing Isabella answered. "Are you crying?" "Kelly was worried. I hate him." The woman confessed. "He ruined my whole life. He hit me." "Again?" Terrified, exclaimed the girlfriend. "Yes," Isabella cried. "He came in drunk. I just asked him where he'd been all night, and then he started. He yelled that it was none of my business, and then he hit me. Good thing my son didn't see. I don't understand what happened to him. You always said he loved you." "He did, but then it went away, and it all started when I had Brian. He still can't forgive me for finishing college, and I wanted to study. I wasn't going to bury myself in housework. He didn't like it. Good for you for not giving in and finishing your degree, even if it was by correspondence. It's a popular specialty, finance and credit. If something happens, you can always provide for yourself and your son." That's when we started to have disagreements. He was jealous of every pillar. You should have seen how mad he got when I hired a nanny for our boy so I could study. That's when he started hitting the bottle. He'd get drunk. He'd get out of control. The first time he hit me was when I accused him of cheating. You should have heard the way he screamed. I thought he was gonna kill me. Since then, he's never been shy about laying a hand on me. I don't envy you. I think I'm happy. I never felt happy, and now I don't feel happy at all. Alcohol has changed him beyond recognition. No trace of his former love for me. He's disappeared from home more and more often. I know for a fact that he spends his time in the company of strange women. Do you know how disgusting it is to see him with lipstick on his collar? Are you going to put up with that? No, of course not. I kept quiet for a long time, hoping he'd come to his senses, but every year it gets worse. How does he run the firm? That's the point. The firm was starting to die. I realized if I didn't take over, we'd go bankrupt sooner or later. You're doing great. You're going to do great. Yeah, but I've never worked a day in my specialty. So what? Prove to him and to yourself that you're worth something. You were the smartest among us. You can do it. Isabella puzzled over which side of the firm to revitalize. The first thing she decided to do was to talk to her husband about her son. "Christian, I need to consult with you." Having had a moment when he was relatively sober, the woman spoke. "What do you want from me?" He was irritated, his head ached, he wanted a drink, but Isabella had locked herself in the study with him and wouldn't let him have one. "Give me a drink," demanded the man. "No," the woman said firmly. "Let's talk first. You didn't get anything mixed up. What are you doing bossing me around? Have you forgotten where you belong? I might remind you, if you don't listen to me now, we both risk the abyss." She bravely endured his ominous stare. "Well, speak, yes, quickly. I want to send my son to study abroad. What on earth are you talking about?" The Christian burst into a fit of rage. "I will not give my consent. You'll have to agree." Isabella said calmly, "I'm sending him away because I don't have the opportunity to pay much attention to him." "Explain?" "If you don't know, our firm's business is bad. You don't have time to deal with it. You've had other interests lately." The woman sneered. "None of your business." Christian snapped at her. "I'm fed up with you. Do you think I've forgotten that you decided to study without consulting me? My knowledge will come in handy now. I want to try to keep our firm afloat." "What?" The man laughed. "You. What do you know about business? Without me, you're nothing. If I want, our business will go up, and you take care of the house and the child, and do not interfere where you are not asked. Right now, I need to intervene. I demand that you authorize me to sign documents. On what grounds do you demand it? On the grounds that I'm your lawfully wedded wife. You're going to ruin the firm. We won't lose anything. It'll be dead soon enough, and if I can save the business, fine, to hell with you. You've already succeeded once with me." The man snorted. "Call a notary. I'll issue a permit. After all, I can always cancel all contracts. I think you won't have to blush for me." And Isabella began to master. Christian at first freaked out, and when he realized that his wife gradually began to get everything, sang blackly of his own impotence. How many times? The woman was indignant. "You drink every day. I need your help so much." "Why? You're doing a great job already. But you're experienced, you know the firm inside and out, and I have to learn everything all over again." "I told you couldn't do it. I can handle it." Isabella was stubborn. "Just don't drink, please." She had no idea that a healthy-looking man could fall victim to an insidious disease. One night she stayed late at work. "Why is it so quiet at home?" Isabella wondered as she entered the living room. "Christian, where are you? Did you go to bed already? I need your advice. I think I've figured out why things aren't going well." She looked into the kitchen. Her husband was nowhere to be found. She opened the bedroom door and was horrified. "Christian, what's wrong?" Isabella rushed to her husband, who was lying on the floor with his arm tucked under him. "Christian, don't frighten me." The man mumbled, writhing in pain as his wife tried to lift him up. "Christian?" Isabella cried, startled by the realization. "You're having a stroke." "Wait, I'll call an ambulance." She called the doctor, asked the guards to move her husband to the couch. "Unfortunately, you're right. Christian is having a stroke." "Confirmed my worst guesses, doctor. His right side is paralyzed. I'll prescribe therapy, of course, but whether he'll make a full recovery, I can't say. We don't know exactly how long it was before you found him. The outcome of the disease depends on that." "Doctor." Isabella grabbed the man's arm fearfully. "I beg you, don't tell anyone that Christian is paralyzed. If partners and competitors find out about his condition, our business will be ruined. I'll repay you whatever you say, and I'll pay you for your silence." "Good. The doctor looked at the woman in surprise. "It's up to you. You're in shock now. We'll talk later. One more favor. Help me find a professional nurse for him." "That won't be a problem. I promise I'll find the best one. What am I supposed to do now?" "Pray to God and don't give up hope. Christian, young man, he'll do fine." Isabella is immersed in business. Not a living soul knew that Christian lay a vegetable in their big house. Only the nurse and the cook were allowed to see him. "Isabella," one day the secretary informed her, "a rival firm wants to see you." "What is it?" Isabella felt a chill go through her. "They didn't say, but they've set up a meeting for tomorrow at the cafe." "Well, let them know I'm ready to meet." "Oh, and tell the chief accountant I'm expecting 6 months' worth of returns." Half an hour later, the chief accountant showed up. "Isabella," he began, "I don't understand why you're digging through old reports." Chuckling to himself in a mustache, the man asked, "Why should such a pretty head have to bother with such dull figures?" "Christian checked them. I don't think you'll find anything interesting there." "I'm interested." Trying not to lose her composure, the woman replied, "To understand why lately we've had lucrative deals fall through, why the materials we partially paid for don't arrive on time, you can answer me these questions, can't you?" "Well, my dear," stretching words and hinting that she knows nothing about the affairs of the construction company, said the chief accountant, "it happens, sometimes deals are broken and suppliers let down. It's all business. I need a full report and analysis of the working firm. If you can't give clear answers to my questions, I won't keep you. You're firing me." The man's eyes widened in surprise. "I do not need people who do not cope with their duties and also let you openly laugh at the head of the firm. You're not the head of the firm. As long as my husband is sick, I am the head of the firm. If you don't want to follow my orders, the door's over there. Do you understand? Instead of helping me to save the firm, you're sticking your fingers in my wheel. Christian is sick, and you're happy to tear up his life's work, you ingrates. My husband has done so much for you. I see you get a good salary, go, work, and that by the evening, the report was on my desk." Isabella said firmly. Shocked by her rebuff, the chief accountant silently went to his office. "Can you imagine?" The man was indignant. "She told me off like a boy. I've been working in this company for 20 years, she, without a year a week, and already in full command. Who is she anyway?" Supported his colleague. "We have never seen her before in our lives. They say she has not worked. How will she be able to save the company? Did Christian buy her diploma? Yeah, someone gets gold, but she gets a diploma. With that kind of knowledge, she shouldn't be in business. How did she manage to marry Christian? He was a confirmed bachelor. Don't you know how girls like that get married? With a figure like that, a face like that, you could seduce anyone. I can't wait for Christian to come back to us. I know in my heart she'll bring the firm to a standstill. I wonder how she'll sort out the accounts. She probably only knows how to spend money. Why are you going after her? Isabella's got an advocate. Let her try, see if it works out. Christian will be back, and her competitors aren't dormant. You mark my words, they'll try to get their hands on the firm." The next day, Isabella came to the cafe to meet with a representative of a rival firm. "What did you want to tell me?" Without further ado, the woman asked, "How's your health, Christian?" "By your prayers. I don't think you asked me here to ask about Christian's health. Tell me what you wanted to say." "I don't have much time." "It has come to our attention," the man spoke softly, "that your firm has been experiencing some difficulties in recent months. We'd like to help. Help how? We'd like to buy your firm out of your problems. Why would a pretty woman like you take on a huge business? You don't know much about construction, to put it mildly. Yes, things are a little rough right now, but it's only temporary. Barely restraining, ready to burst out of emotion, said Isabella. We are not going to sell the business. Christian is seriously ill. Will he be able to return to the management of the company? Don't doubt it. He is already on the mend. Perhaps we could meet him then and talk things over. Maybe he'd be interested in our offer. He's got his health to worry about, and the problems at work could aggravate his illness. Shouldn't you be so worried about my husband's health? The doctors are doing all the necessary procedures to get him back on his feet. And by the way, they don't recommend disturbing him. As I said, we have no plans to sell the firm. My husband is in the loop, and I'm coordinating with him. As far as I'm concerned, the business is in a critical state, and we're offering a good price. No, don't persuade me. My husband will soon get back on his feet and figure things out on his own, but in the meantime, I'm doing a good job of running the firm. I hear the employees don't trust you very much. I wonder how you know so much about our firm. Oh, I get it. There's an inside man on the payroll. Let's not talk about that. The man avoided answering. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. Isabella got up from the table. We have nothing more to talk about, so you'll consider our offer? I won't be able to offer such a favorable price next time. My answer is no. Isabella flew to work. We have a mole. How did I not realize? She thought. That explains everything. My job is to find it, and the sooner the better. She meticulously studied every document, even taking her work home. There in silence, she worked easier than under the gaze of subordinates, who frankly laughed behind her back, skeptical of her ability to pull the firm out of a series of bad deals. Imagine that. She complained to her friend. They don't take me seriously. No wonder. Callie laughed. With the way you look. Who's gonna believe you're good at accounting? That you're so smart. I have to find the mole, or our competitors will be working ahead of us. Think, analyze, concentrate, and then everything will work out. And Isabella, day after day, got deeper and deeper into her work. Explain it to me, please. Looking at the contracts, she asked the chief engineer, how come we refused to build a shopping center on such a profitable site? So their geodesist surveyed and concluded that the soil is not suitable for construction. Then why did the competitors start construction on this very territory? I don't know. The man was embarrassed. Who made the decision not to build? That's how he stopped talking. The address of the surveyors who did the report. So he hesitated. That's right. Their firm closed down. How is that possible? Why are you being so secretive? Get me the chief accountant right away. He paid for the work done, right? He must know the address of the company. The chief accountant entered the office cautiously, explained how it happened that the firm, which made a conclusion about the state of the soil on the site on which they planned to build a shopping center, closed immediately after signing the papers. Give me its address. I'll go to deal with it myself. So know the address, mumbled the chief accountant. I wonder how many plots we lost because of this fake firm. The men looked at each other in silence. You both immediately write a letter of resignation. Isabella ordered quietly but firmly. You have no right to fire us. The chief engineer shrieked. We were hired by Christian. Don't you dare poke me. I'm in charge of personnel here now. Get out, both of you. Isabella, the receptionist came flying in. How could you fire the most responsible employees? Christian wouldn't allow it. Christian didn't realize that these responsible employees had recently started working for the competition. Simply put, they were selling out, betraying their boss. If you don't agree with my decision, I will quickly find a replacement for you." Isabella looked at the girl expectantly. She shamefully kept silent. "That's fine. Now you need to find replacements for these two honorable people. It is better if it will be found among our employees." "Okay, I understand. But what should I tell the staff?" "I'll figure it out." The girl left, and Isabella took a deep breath, then got up and went to the conference room. "Gather me the heads of departments in accounting. I need a lawyer immediately." "Right away." The secretary looked at Isabella with respect. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the hall. "I fired 2 employees. After a thorough investigation of the firm, it turned out that they were working for competitors. Now I believe our business will be more successful. I need your support. Christian has stepped aside for now. I'll need time to sort things out. If anyone is unhappy with the woman at the helm of the firm, they can report it immediately. The rest of you, I demand full commitment. If you have any candidates in mind, I don't mind reviewing their resumes. Any questions? Then let's get to work." The employees came out of the meeting puzzled. "So much for the model." They marveled. "And we laughed at her, but she was so clever. Even Christian could not find the moles, and she quickly identified them. So how could those who started the firm with him be suspicious? Don't get too excited before the competition finds out Christian's doing badly. If no one tells, maybe it'll be all right. But the competitors weren't dormant. Wilson's business was too tasty. They were getting closer and closer to the firm, probing for weaknesses." Isabella realized their lost interest was temporary. Isabella. One day, a secretary came flying into the office. I tried to stop them, but you shouldn't try to stop me. Pushing the secretary away, a handsome young man entered the office with a brisk stride. Isabella noted his lean figure, thick, dark hair, and brown eyes that glowed with mockery. He sat down in the chair uninvited. "It's nothing to worry about." The woman calmed the secretary. "I'll take care of it. Who are you?" she asked as the door closed behind the girl. "My name is Charles. I'm offering to sell me your firm. What makes you think I'm going to sell it? I'm aware of your problems. You're not the first to know my problems, but I'm the first to tell you we're going to get this thing back on track. If you have no more questions for me, please leave the office. You're interfering with my work, or I'll have to call security. I know Christian is paralyzed. He can't go back to work, and you don't know anything about construction. I'm amazed at your knowledge." Isabella looked mockingly at the intruder, but her heart clenched with fear. "But Christian will be fine, and I'm not bad with finances, for your information. I'll make sure you can't sign any lucrative contracts. Are you threatening me? In return, when Christian comes back to the firm, and he will, you'll be in trouble. We have a good reputation. You will not be able to ruin the business. If you do not leave, I will dig up dirt on you. I've already got material on how you've been diverting customers away from us through front men. I'll make it public. Are you willing to risk it?" "You bet your ass I will. Christian will back me up. He knows everything that goes on around the firm. If you try to destroy us, I won't stand by and retaliate." "Bitch," the man hissed. "It was nice to meet you." The woman smiled through force. She was nervous, her lips trembling. "I dare not delay you any longer. I'm leaving, but I'll be back. Good riddance." Left alone, Isabella, without strength, leaned back in her chair and cried. "Isabella, are you all right?" Alarmed, her secretary asked, entering the office after the guest had left. "Would you like me to make you some tea?" "Thank you, I'd appreciate it." "And you are good," the secretary said, putting a cup with steaming tea. "No one believed that you could manage the firm. I didn't believe it myself." Tiredly replied the woman, I had to learn no one knows what will happen to us next. I will not be left alone for a long time, these businessmen. You have successfully won the first battle. I think this is just the beginning. How much do I miss Christian? He's been in a borderline state for almost a month. There was a phone call. Isabella? The woman on the phone heard the excited voice of the nurse. Christian, he's awake. Roger, on my way. What's wrong? The secretary asked, seeing the change in her face. Christian came to his senses. I'm leaving now. Don't tell anyone yet. Isabella hurried home. She didn't know how she saw her husband and was afraid to meet him. Are you here? He turned his head at the sound of the creaking door. Christian spoke slurred. Isabella rather read his lips what he said. He was pale, a wry grin on his face, saliva flowing helplessly from the corner of his mouth. I'm glad you've come to your senses. She crouched carefully beside him on the bed, wiped his chin with a napkin. Leave us alone, she asked the nurse. How are you? There is no more of me, just a semblance of a human being. The man tried to smile. His face twisted even more. What about the firm? Did you manage to sell it? I managed to save the firm. You did? Christian's eyes flashed first with bewilderment, then surprise, then joy, then tears. I didn't believe in you. I was sure we were ruined. Think about it. How could I let everything you've built up over the years go to waste? How did you do it? I scrutinized the documents and found the moles. Who? The man marveled. Who are they? Your main assistants. I don't believe it. It's a good thing I didn't have an old friendship with them. I couldn't trust anyone, so I evaluated everyone with a cold head, and that's how I found the traitors. And our business immediately went better. The staff found in the firm, people responsible, most importantly, they believed me. It was difficult to shut the mouth of competitors. They were ready to swallow us, but it was not to be. I am not one of the fearful. I remember. Christian grinned with difficulty. I was able to fend off the first 2 attacks. The woman was silent, but we hope for your recovery. That you've come to your senses is a good sign. I'm not deceived. He looked at his wife carefully, and I realize my present condition is only a temporary improvement. I feel I don't have much time left. Don't say that. Hotly, Isabella exclaimed. You'll make it. No, I'm done for. I'm not getting my hopes up. He closed his eyes and was silent. Tell me, did you love me a little? He asked, after a moment's pause, looking pitifully at his wife. Don't lie to me. I want to know the truth. No. Quietly confessed the woman. I never loved you. I knew I felt you didn't love me, but I had hoped so much to be wrong. You're legendary in business circles, even have your own admirers. Ah, she picked up on Charles' mocking tone. I thought you were here to take over the firm again. I have another suggestion. Why don't we merge our firms? I'm doing fine. I don't need anyone's help. Isabella. Charles came very close to her, handed her flowers. She buried her face in them, savoring the fragrance. I liked you right away, that memorable meeting. I didn't expect to be rebuffed. I was told you were a beautiful doll with no brains, but I realized from the first minute that you were a smart and confident woman. I was afraid to admit even to myself that I was in love. You know, it happens, but you were married at the time, and then the funeral. I didn't want to be intrusive. I decided to wait, but now you're free. Why can't I tell you that I like you? And you come to me so easily after the threats I heard from you in my office? Forgive me. I'm ready to beg your forgiveness. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. In the fight against the competition, all means are good. I'm sorry. I realized long ago that I was wrong. You have a good tongue. Isabella laughed. It's the excitement, Charles confessed. What is it? Can I expect reciprocation? Charles, the woman grew serious. I do not want to give you hope, so I confess at once, I am not ready for a serious relationship. I've had some unfortunate experiences in married life. I'm just now beginning to live, to breathe. I was deprived of all this for many years to break free from dependence on my husband. It cost me a lot of labor and nerves. You can't imagine what I've been through. To go back into the care of another man? No way. I assure you, I won't restrict your freedom. I wish I could believe you, but I can't. Is there any hope that someday you'll reciprocate? I don't know. We don't know each other very well. Well, let's get to know each other. Charles came to life. I'm inviting you to a restaurant tonight. No need. Isabella headed for the car. I like to have dinner at home with my son. How do you feel about children, by the way? I didn't know you had a son. The man was surprised. Christian never talked about him. He probably never said anything about me either. The woman grinned. Yes, I have a son, and you'll have to earn his favor if you're going to court me. Did I scare you? So you'll let me court you? I'm ready. The persistent suitor has perked up. Invite me to visit. I want to make sure that you are not only smart and beautiful, but also a good cook. If that's the case, then you're definitely my woman. Isabella got into the car, started it, carefully placed the bouquet next to her. The man looked at her with regret. Suddenly, she rolled down the window. If you want, come to visit me on Sunday afternoon. I'll introduce you to my son and feed you lunch. I'll definitely come. Charles exclaimed joyfully, looking at the car in which the amazing woman was sitting. I won't let you go anywhere. He promised. I will do everything I can to make you learn to trust again. My love can warm your soul. I promise you that we will be happy.